One day, chaos came to the world. Monsters attacked people and destroyed everything around, sowing panic and destruction. They appeared completely suddenly and attacked everyone indiscriminately. The monsters were much larger and stronger than humans, had sharp fangs and tough skin. The creatures could appear anywhere and cause chaos, and ordinary people could not cope with them. Helicopter blades cut through the air with a noise in the Cheongho-dong area. A new anomaly appeared, and at first people couldn't even understand what it was. The Cyclopean object did not attack people, even if they were nearby. The rocky tower towered over the city like a single sharp tusk. She soon revealed herself by activating a summoning circle and absorbing people straight from the streets. Once inside, at first they didn't know what was happening or why. The tower seemed to have played a lottery and called upon random winners. For years they disappeared into the depths and underwent severe trials, until every fifth person on Earth visited the tower and became a hunter. The hunters who cleared the tower became the new hope of humanity. 12 years after its discovery, the monsters have not disappeared. Ugly creatures, vile and bloodthirsty, continued to appear on the city's streets. But now they were easily repulsed. Killed with one blow, hunters destroyed monsters with magic and other abilities. Their appearance attracted a storm of attention and loud applause. Like heroes, they became an ideal for people. Even ordinary hunters were known by name. Their forces forced governments to pass new laws. However, hunters created their own world, with guilds and unions outside the state. The operator gave the signal to let them know they were on the air. There were 3 guests in the studio, 2 men and a girl between them. The beautiful presenter greeted the audience and began the show. Today, the leaders of the 3 best guilds in Korea gathered in the studio. The leader of the Goguryeo Guild, Han Kwon-so, is a young man with a bold hairstyle. A refined, model-like blue-eyed girl from the Aaron Guild, Lee So-yeon. The last one to introduce himself was the unflappable handsome man, Kim Si-hyun, the leader of the Seoul Guild. The show started talking about an experienced player, a mysterious person who became popular online. The guild leaders were surprised to hear the familiar nickname. The experienced player has given rise to many legends and urban stories about himself. Kwon-so laughed cheerfully. Judging by what they say, the player did not die and is living well. The beauty, So-yeon, said that she is an experienced player and has been living in the tower for 12 years. When the tower was cleared, he did not leave like the others, but went back down to the first floor, Kim Si-hyun added. All 3 believed him to be the first hunter summoned by the tower. For as long as it exists, a hunter lives in it, clearing it out time after time. One could only guess how strong the man was that he lived for 12 long years. He walked up the tower from the 1st to the 100th floor in one day. The player is stronger than any tower student in all basic skills except magic. One day the hunters ran away without looking back and called for help. Throwing away their weapons and wounded, the group ran away, but one man did not run. The explosion threw back several weak hunters, but the guy in the tracksuit was not hurt. The impact raised a large cloud of dust and covered the cave. But the guy in flip-flops on his bare feet walked forward slowly. The hunter walked forward in deep thought, as if he were walking in a park. He looked up when he came across an obstacle in front of him. Just the final boss stood in his way, grinning with an ugly mouth. Balok, a demon with a fiery mane, loomed over a simple guy in a suit and flip-flops, and he played a staring game with him, staring at him with his eyes red from the coals. The guy smiled at the demon as if he were an old friend. "I have seeds, and if I find any," he asked. There was a lot of gossip about the experienced player on the internet. Everyone wanted to determine his rank. Witnesses told different stories of how they crossed paths with the player in their levels. One day, on the 72nd floor, he single-handedly dealt with 3 huge werewolves. After meeting the player, people reported that he was inhumanly strong. They wrote that he could jump from the 1st floor to the 10th. The guy in the tracksuit gave the demon a regular kick. The demon's head cracked against the cave floor, its palisade of teeth clicking together. The demon growled angrily, unable to rise after receiving such a blow. Slipper pinned the tower's final boss's head to the ground. The guy in the tracksuit, laughing madly, stood over the defeated enemy. He laughed so crazy that it was time to doubt who was the bigger demon here. The boss of the last floor was decomposing in a magical glow like a normal dungeon monster. The crazy guy in the tracksuit sighed. It was all over too quickly. Over the course of 12 years, the time it took to complete the Tower of Learning was gradually reduced. All the towers were similar to each other, and their contents did not change. The number of those who completed the training grew, and their knowledge accumulated and helped others avoid dangers. People dealt with monsters that they would not have been able to defeat otherwise, Information became the main weapon of the tower's dungeons. Over time, the training turned into something like a sporting competition, where groups of hunters set new records. In many countries, sharing information has become the best strategy to help the weak survive and to identify and recruit the strong. However, there was a limit to what a person could do, even with an advantage in information. People were dying like flies, and only a few survivors were able to reach the end of the tower. Hundreds of hunters died despite all the efforts and assistance. Even after reaching the top floor, they continued to suffer losses. The monster of the 100th floor, the lord of the tower, the demon blazing with fire, blocked the way. The final test of the tower, the ugly evil demon Balok. This disaster took the lives of half of the players, and the survivors will be tormented by nightmares. And this terrible monster was nullified by one attack of striped slippers. A crazy guy in a tracksuit took a penalty with the head of a demon. Not a single black and white striped flip-flop was harmed. The surviving hunters couldn't believe their eyes. Their nightmare in reality was killed with one blow. 1349th Purge. The insanely strong guy counted out melancholically. The light from the portal illuminated his face, indifferent to everything. Sighing, he slapped his feet towards the purple portal, the exit from the tower. He closed his eyes and listened to the sensations. The familiar feeling of slight disorientation came and went. He opened his eyes and looked around. No changes, still the same damp dungeon. The neon banner on the first floor still greeted those who entered in a boring manner. A new passage had begun. A nervous laugh was heard from a guy in sweatpants and flip-flops. He fell to his knees and was completely desperate. Even a fun ride would get boring if you didn't get off it. The entire tower shook from his choice curses, and the involuntary prisoner begged to be returned home. Having let off some steam, the hunter lay down on the cold stone floor of the tower. And I called up the status window, as I did every time after another cleaning cycle. The familiar blue rectangle of the interface appeared before my eyes as a translucent cloud. 12 years ago, they and their friends reached Balok with great losses, among the first. Having defeated the demon, the four friends rejoiced, celebrating their victory and imminent return home. Everyone thanked Kim Hyun-woo for saving them and agreed to meet again. But the hunter modestly denied his merits and promised to meet with them. However, after the portal, disappointment awaited him. He again saw the boring sign of a bugged establishment. The neon sign blinded his eyes. He was the only one who returned to the starting room. The Banshee curse was received. He read the sentence in the blue window. No matter how hard Hyun-woo tried to understand why he was cursed and put in prison, he still couldn't find the answers. Then he began to clear the tower himself, from the very bottom, and slowly went crazy trying everything possible. Hyun-woo stubbornly walked past the tower dozens of times, each time carving a mark on the stone. He quickly increased his physical strength to the limit and could crush stones with his bare hands. But the boring neon sign haunted him at the damned entrance to the tower. Even after 5 years of trying everything possible, he couldn't get out. In his own way, he even enjoyed what was happening, playing pranks on the other hunters. Kim Hyun-woo gave them quests, acting as the starting NPC mentor and dungeon guide. He played the role of a tough military training instructor, making the new recruits sweat during training. But this could not continue for long. Everyone he knew left the tower after the cleansing. After 1,000 playthroughs, he was looking at the status window again, dying of boredom. But this time, something was different. And Hyun-woo stood up excitedly. He read the inscription again, curse broken. It told him the status. Hyun-woo grinned like a madman. Would they really let him out after so many years? His joyful cry shook all the floors of the tower from the first to the last. The hardcore prisoner gathered all his physical strength in his flip-flops. The guy in the tracksuit did a normal jump-up, but with such force that in one fell swoop it broke through 10 floors. A lonely guy in flip-flops was finally heading home. The host of the show asked the guild leaders if the 18th group of hunters that entered the tower could break the clearing record. The groups vary greatly in composition, number, cohesion, and it is difficult to predict their capabilities in advance, answered the beauty Lee So-yeon. It is also important to understand which techniques are more effective given each person's abilities, Kim Si-hyun added, with a straight face. Kwon. So clarified that the biggest obstacles arise after passing the middle of the tower. Starting from the 51st floor, every 10 floors a high-level boss would appear, much stronger than the other mobs. The level 60 boss became worried, sensing something was wrong. At his level, a strong earthquake began, as if a volcanic eruption was approaching. The earth split open, revealing a mad hunter rushing home. His eyes were burning with fire. How many years this tower had kept him locked up? In one jump, he passed 10 levels like a rocket. 90th floor, Hyunwoo's rocket didn't slow down, but instead continued to gain speed. Level after level was reduced to flaming ruins, all by one player. Explosions comparable to bombs, stones turned to dust, until the insanely strong prisoner reached the top floor. The stupid, ugly bastard stared at the hunter for the last time. Down with this boring game where there are no updates and the exit button doesn't work. Balok was reset in a second from one light kick to the solar plexus. The ascent took a record few minutes and almost destroyed the tower. Jongho-dong, Gongdong District, the tower's access control center, observed its activity at the foot of the tower. A flash of purple light left the office staff confused and staring out the window. The tower gate opened, revealing a purple portal hole. A guy in a tracksuit and flip-flops on his bare feet came out onto the lawn in front of the tower. Kim Hyun-woo looked at the city in front of him, laughing madly. The guy was met by a slightly overweight employee of the surveillance office who congratulated him on passing. "Good job," he praised the hunter, but he was still recovering from his long stint in prison. Finally, the eccentric boy turned around sharply and looked at the official. Hyun-woo asked him sharply with a trembling voice if he really had left the tower. The young man's face shone with joy. He wanted to hear it from the outside, to know for sure that he had not dreamed it. "He's home," a loud voice rang out. "Kim Hyun-woo is finally back." His name was not found on the list of the last 18th group. The observer had to leaf through the entire impressive list of those studying in the tower. The first group, the association observer, was surprised. He thought it was impossible. An experienced player, hunter of the first group of the training tower, Kim Hyun-woo, officially got out of the tower after 12 years. A week later, a crowd of people gathered outside the testing center. People were in a hurry to meet the newcomers from the 18th group, and to see the stars already known to the whole world, who would also be here. Considering that this group broke the world record by 2 whole weeks, the hype around them is more than justified. But one more piece of news could not go unnoticed. That same hunter is also here today. Graceful legs and fashionable shoes walked along the wooden parquet floor of the VIP box. A nice girl entered the well-furnished living room. She was a little late for a meeting with friends. The 3 gathered were representatives of the best hunter guilds. They came to check out the rumors about the returning hunter. Now they will gather together again. They will easily recognize each other because in the tower there is no cold and sleep, and people do not age. Their friend has not changed a bit since then. Han So-kwon was looking forward to the meeting. He was worried about how strong his former comrade could become. The hall was filled with newcomers wearing protective gear, waiting for the test to begin. Kim Hyun-woo gnawed on a bag of chips, having longed for their taste over the years. The snack quickly ended and he sighed in disappointment. He yawned sleepily, surprising the entire group of novice hunters. Hyun-woo noticed that the hunters were wearing strange equipment. The equipment was distributed early in the morning, but the freed hunter missed it all, wanting to sleep longer after 12 years without sleep. The starting signal sounded and everyone was serious, as if a difficult test was ahead. The gates opened, blinding the rookie hunters inside with a bright light. Hyun-woo closed his eyes, not knowing what to expect from the test. He was clearly bored. They came out to the labyrinth. A huge building the size of a hangar stood in front of them. The newcomers were greeted by a man in a black mafia boss suit. A-rank hunter, David. He wore a black suit, black drop glasses for coolness. He was bursting with importance, as if he were a secret agent on an important mission. He began a pompous introductory speech, and the crowd of greenhorn newcomers listened to him attentively. The hunters were nervous, despite having just cleared the tower. Maybe it was David's suit that impressed them, or the knowledge that they were being watched by cameras. David looked pleased with the impression he made on the newcomers. But there was no need to worry, the examiner said in a patronizing tone. Everyone except one person listened to his instructions. Kim Hyun-woo openly yawned. He felt sleepy already after David's first words. He thought only about how to quickly end everything. David continued to put on airs. He took out his phone and announced the start of the first test. The terrible grinding sound was unpleasantly irritating to the ears, like the scraping of stone on metal. There are many tests ahead in the labyrinth, the examiner added, shouting over the grinding noise. As if by magic, the heavy megaliths rose into the air. They moved quickly, making a rumble and a grinding noise, as if they were racing. The monoliths formed complex three-dimensional structures of intricate shape. High walls rose up in front of the subjects. David continued to throw dust in the eyes of the young and inexperienced, warning them about the traps and dangers of the labyrinth. The boys and girls stood at the ready and hoped to show everything they were capable of. Their eyes were burning with determination, and now they were eager to fight as if for the first time. The adrenaline in their blood made them grip their weapons tighter and grit their teeth. The signal to attack was given, and they moved forward in a coordinated manner as a group. David watched the fleeing group. This group seemed disciplined and prepared to him. He smiled, remembering his youth, and whether it was worth expecting good results from the newcomers this time. David was pleased with the good start, but one hunter had not yet entered the maze. He called out to David from behind, tearing him away from his thoughts. "You just need to get out of the labyrinth," the guy in the suit clarified. David pulled his drops back to look at this weirdo. Who was this guy, he asked himself, who was in no hurry at all? Without equipment and just a tracksuit and flip-flops, he didn't look like an ordinary newbie. This guy can really pass the test. The examiner was surprised. The shaggy weirdo came closer and stared at him self-confidently. Hyun-woo waited for the answer. Neither the test itself nor his grade mattered to him. What kind of joke is this? The examiner frowned. This newbie was allowing himself too much. In addition, the newcomer only smirked in response and advised David to watch the other students. David flared up. After all, he was an A-rank hunter, and some chick was treating him without any respect. Kim Hyun-woo, as if he was counting on it, offered a bet that he could get through the maze in 20 seconds, with a bet of 1 million won for the winner. The newcomer was talking complete nonsense, which made me even more angry. Could it be that he got scared? The eccentric hunter egged David on. 10 million, David muttered through his teeth. He decided to raise the stakes. As soon as he heard the amount, Hyun-woo, overjoyed, rushed towards the labyrinth. What kind of crazy person is he, David thought. Hyun-woo's hand touched the wall of the labyrinth, an ordinary stone. The tower is made of the same. Hyun-woo was counting the money in his mind. The fees for hunters in the service of the state were impressive. Tens of millions of won, easy money in his pocket. Hyun-woo swung his fist from a low stance, like a karateka. The main thing in a strike is the point of support. He pressed himself firmly into the ground, and he released his power, his foot going deeper into the concrete base. David took off his glasses, not understanding what the strange newcomer was up to. The audience stared at the screen, also confused about what the experienced player was doing. Even his friends couldn't tell what was happening and watched closely. Hyun-woo concentrated, took a deep breath and gathered his strength. His hand was covered in a blinding blue glow. He released all his absurd power in one blow with a bright flash. The shockwave permeated the labyrinth as if it were made of cardboard. Hyun-woo walked through the thick cloud of dust, along a well-trodden path. Standing proudly in the middle of the piles of rocks on the other side of the labyrinth, he announced that he had passed the test. He just won the bet he himself proposed. Easy money. There was a commotion in the audience hall. The audience was in shock. Kwon So was pleased their friend was still a stubborn guy. Hyun-woo could only think about the 10 million won he just won. Suddenly it dawned on him that he was no longer in the tower, where everything would fix itself. It remained to be hoped that he would not be forced to pay for the damages. The day before testing, work was in full swing in Hunter's editorial office. The next issue of the magazine was special because of its participants. Rumors of a seasoned player may have boosted sales of the magazine this month. However, it was not easy to find anything about the player. The editors were also looking for other promising newcomers. One such person was on the list. The journalists knew him well, as they followed the hunters. The newcomer is strong in traditional martial arts and has good physical fitness. This newbie hunter could outshine even an experienced player. They had to prepare. Lee Kang-hyun read the caption underneath the photo of the stern-looking guy. The hunter gripped his sword tightly and prepared for battle. He always dreamed of becoming a star, of gaining fame and recognition. And he always had enough skills, intelligence, and luck on the way to this goal. Where others fled, he remained to meet the enemy, holding his katana firmly in front of him. And that is why he always went into battle without fear or a shadow of doubt. No matter what terrible monsters he encountered on his way, he never retreated. He was not afraid of death. He looked into its eyes and chopped with all his might. Thus, Lee Kang-hyun became the best hunter of the 18th group. A good debut was a step towards his success. He could count on it. That's what he thought until he saw the boss of the 100th floor die from one peak. With a kick, the terrible demon of the tower had his head completely cut off. Someone disregarded all the efforts Lee Kang-hyun had put in to climb up. He remembered the face of the madman with burning eyes who snatched victory from his hands. That bastard blew through like a hurricane without even looking at them. An unknown crazy psycho cleared out the tower instead of the entire team. With a joyful laugh, he rushed into the portal and was gone. After all, this lunatic took away all the glory that Lee Kang-hyun should have received. They met again at the hunter's exam. He was just shining while passing the test. and now it is interrupted by an unknown force. The destroyed labyrinth is no longer suitable for conducting the exam. There was a commotion, with journalists and other observers rushing to find out what had happened. No one was filming Hyunwoo at that moment, because he fell behind the main group, which was led by Lee Kang-hyun. And who would have paid attention to a shaggy guy in slippers? Hyunwoo's face appeared on the screens in the journalist's studio. A star was born. Kang Hana gritted his teeth. For the second time, his well-deserved glory had been taken away from him. Hyunwoo just slept while he could. No one yet realized that all the commotion was because of him. In the waiting room, they gossiped about what had happened. Lee Kang-hyun kept his eyes on his dangerous opponent. He did not lose hope for a rematch and hoped to get even. They were informed over the loudspeakers that a new test was due to begin in 15 minutes. The noise woke up Hyunwoo, who was sleeping peacefully, and made him open his eyes and stop drooling. For Lee Kang-hyun, this was a ray of hope. He had to show his best. The head of an ugly orc appeared right ahead. The test was called the Monster Flow. Kang Hung drew his purple aura sword and prepared to fight. He rushed at them with his strongest technique, without holding back. The blade was enveloped in lightning magic and electricity sparked at its tip. A powerful spell was cast upon the crowd of holographic targets, and this created a furor. Using magic immediately after clearing the tower was rare. The masters of the best guilds also noticed the birth of a true genius. Lee Kang-hyun was jubilant. His moment of glory had come, where he could prove himself. He used a technique with many strokes of sword and magic, and they killed 78 targets. A lot for one man. He alone was worth an entire team. Here it is, that very feeling. He got what he deserves, the best result. All the glory now belongs to him. Observers also gave him high marks. He definitely looked like a candidate for leadership. He would have been noticed earlier if it weren't for the strange guy in sweatpants. Hyunwoo was obviously bored, but he went to take the test. Lee Kang-hyun was wary of what this crazy guy would do this time, he thought. For journalists, such stories are fodder. They closely watched the competition between the genius and the experienced player. Hyunwoo's friends also watched him closely to see how his fighting technique might change, what new things he would show. The test room filled with the light of the holograms, and the timer began counting down 2 minutes for the test. The holograms of the enemies lit up. Ordinary orcs. Nothing special. Hyunwoo stood in the middle, his hands in his pockets nonchalantly. The audience watched intently, glued to their screens. The friends of the experienced player froze in silence in front of the screen. The orcs stared boredly, although quite naturally, and they surrounded him in a tight group while the countdown was still going on. How stupid I have to be, the hermit sighed. It would be better to stay home and sleep, then eat, and sleep some more. The digital targets rushed to attack the indifferent guy. There followed a light push from the ground with a foot in a flip-flop. He left an indented mark on the arena's concrete surface. Hyunwoo hit the first target, cutting off the head of the Orc of Light. It is unlikely that the journalists could keep up with his speed, and now they were only hoping for footage from their cameras. The virtual orcs rushed to attack in a crowd. But at that very moment, the next orc suffered the same fate, his head exploding. Hyunwoo jumped back and forth and knocked off heads like a real flash. For an outside viewer, he simply disappeared, dissolved. All they saw was the monsters' heads exploding, their bodies remaining motionless, only a black shadow flickering between them. At first they suspected magic, but Kwan Song saw through it with his keen eyesight. Hyunwoo moved so fast that even experienced hunters had a hard time keeping up with him. In slow motion, they saw Hyunwoo simply run towards the monster, as if he was on a walk in the forest. And he hit, without much effort, without taking his hand out of his pants. And then I repeated it many times, just holding down the attack button on the joystick. He's just so fast that it seemed like heads were exploding on their own. His friends wondered what he did in the tower to become so fast. Sometimes Hyunwoo did what others thought about him, and that's how he became an experienced player. He stood proudly amidst a pile of bodies as the tabloid revealed his murder tally, 248 kills. And this is what they call a test child's play, Hyunwoo thought. The video broadcast gained millions of views and spread across the internet. Thousands of viewers analyzed it frame by frame and could not believe their eyes. The network did not calm down. They wondered what kind of magic the experienced player had used. Lee Kang-hyun was angry. All the platforms were discussing only the player. His hands were shaking with anger. Once again, all his efforts had gone down the drain. He squeezed his phone so hard that he didn't even notice how he crushed it. To screw up like that on the day of the test, in front of everyone, Lee Kang-hyun didn't want to accept it. The door to the waiting room almost flew out into the corridor from his blows. Out of anger, he took it out on the concrete wall with his bare fists. From morning till night, he worked like crazy, exposed himself to mortal risk, rose in rank, all for the sake of glory. Is it fair that crazy bastard experienced player just went and ruined everything? Lee Kang-hyun howled. A tablet with a long list of names was placed in front of Hyun-woo. After the test, a nice girl took him to a separate room. She gave him a list of guilds that wanted to recruit him. Alice, she introduced herself as the head of the association's information department. Hyun-woo was surprised when he took the business card. He had become unaccustomed to these things over the past 12 years. The manager told him about how the world had changed. Dungeons, labyrinths, and monsters had appeared. Alice was babbling about guilds and monster rewards, but Hyun-woo was thinking about eating. He listened inattentively, so the manager asked him what he was puzzled about. Hyun-woo was distracted from the list and thoughts about delicious food that he hadn't eaten in 12 years. He was bothered by the fact that such issues were being discussed with him personally. This did not seem like the work of the association, he noted. The sly fox admitted that she came on personal business. She was eager to meet him in person and placed the Aries Guild contract in front of him. Hyun-woo started to delve into the terms of the contract, but Alice turned his gaze to the payment section. Hyun-woo got confused when counting the zeros of the one-time payment to the hunter who signed the contract. Alice smiled contentedly. With such a sum, success was guaranteed. A $10 billion contract for one stroke of a pen at the end of a page. Alice repeated the amount again, anticipating a good commission. You can't fool Hyun-woo like that. He hasn't been home for too long. The country could be destroyed by an economic crisis in 10 years. Numbers, zeros are silent. They don't say anything by themselves. Maybe the country has suffered an economic crisis and now everyone gets so much. Because of the monsters, prices did change, but there was no crisis, the market grew. Alice showed him a comparison of property market prices over 10 years. More than convincing, a fourfold increase in 12 years, Hyun-woo's jaw dropped. Even though the property is expensive, he will easily buy it, because he is entitled to $10 billion for the contract. Alice caressed her ears. Moreover, upon completion of the contract, it is possible to conclude it with a new one. Doubling the payments, she poured honey. 10 times 2, 20, Hyun-woo thought. Of course, the contract also implies obligations. Part of the spoils of the dungeons and the labyrinth, the girl added. But he will get a bigger share, the fox smiled. She almost got the cheese. And yet, Hyun-woo did not hold back her suspicions. The information department of the association does not offer contracts. The cat's eyes flashed. She came as a recruiter for the guild, Alice said. In order to protect the interests of hunters, they are prohibited from signing contracts until they leave the dormitory. The girl rubbed her hands contentedly. The fish bit, and said out loud that the contract could be postponed. But Hyun-woo had made up his mind. He had no intention of joining the guild from the start, and he easily threw away the contract. He did not want to join the guild and refused her offer. Alice was embarrassed and took it all as a joke at first, but Hyun-woo stood his ground. This completely confused the manager. She didn't know how to respond. The self-confident hunter repeated his desire to remain alone. The world works on the principle of give and take, he thought when he returned to the hostel. For $10 billion, he will be required to take on a bunch of unwanted responsibilities in which he will drown. A mountain of empty packets of chips has accumulated under the bed. There are no chips in these towers. Hyun-woo wanted a quiet, unhurried life. No need for unnecessary troubles. He will do only what he wants, and when he wants. Did Hyun-woo's words mean he didn't want to be a hunter? Alice asked him. But a hunter can also be a loner, the experienced player answered the girl. She looked at him doubtfully. Being alone, for experienced hunters, a newbie can do little in the labyrinth without a team. To this, Hyun-woo could only smirk. He could definitely do it, the player said at the end. In reality, everything is not as simple as he thinks, Alice replied. The manager asked him to call the number on his business card if Hyun-woo changed his mind, but the hunter simply waved her off. The player lay in despair. He had wasted a lot of time. If he had known about the free hunters earlier, he would have returned home to sleep. Now he was so angry that he couldn't sleep normally. Hyun-woo took the list of invitations from other guilds. A thick stack. But it was a waste of effort, he thought. 3 names seemed familiar to him, as if from a past life. They met 5 days later, at the best Japanese restaurant. While he was eating, Hyun-woo couldn't get used to what he saw. He did not dine alone, and could not get used to what he saw in front of him. He looked at vaguely familiar faces and had difficulty recognizing them. Hyun-woo stared at them. Forgetting about politeness, he left his social skills in the tower. Kwon-so was the same age as Hyun-woo, but now he looked like a grown man, albeit just as cheerful. The crying high school student Shuken became a cool, handsome man like a pop idol. Little So-yeon, who was in middle school, became even cuter. Hyun-woo pointed his finger as if it were a curiosity. "This is Kim Si-hyun," the hermit said. "The one who always cried before level 50, Hyun-woo recalled. On the 14th floor, So-yeon saw a spirit, Hyun-woo said, but the girl interrupted him. Having confirmed their identities with shared memories, Hyun-woo returned to the delicious sushi he had lived without for 12 years. "But what about that incident on the 70th floor?" Shirky objected. "Has Hyun-woo forgotten how they caught the merman?" The hunter kept whining about wanting sushi, and one day they came across a tribe of fishmen. Taking the knife from Kwon-so, Hyun-woo cut off the merman's tail and prepared it into salted meat. Even then, friends understood that legends would be made about Hyun-woo, and from them they later learned that he was living quite well. Hyun-woo became worried and asked again what other legends there were. "He's famous," So-yeon said. "Even your eccentricities were shown on TV," Soo-hyun confirmed her words. A shadow of worry crossed Hyun-woo's face at these thoughts. He was horrified when his concept games were shown on TV, because he had no idea what kind of games they were. There were a lot of them, stupid and absurd eccentricities. A naked cleanup game where he pretended to be a crazy exhibitionist. A game of Gollum, which he implemented out of nowhere, terrifying all the surrounding players. However, the most popular part was the one where he killed bosses while dancing, and the one where he jumped from the first floor to the 10th. Hyun-woo breathed a sigh of relief. The world didn't remember all the madness he had done, and he easily confessed to what he had done. He danced like a lame disco dancer who was deaf in both ears. Even monsters were baffled by his crazy antics. The friends listened attentively to the story from the tower where he had wandered for so long. Hyun-woo paused to eat some delicious sushi, weighing his words. He had been missing this taste for so many years that he had already forgotten it. He was just trying things out, he told his friends. He had a hard time in the tower, but now it's all over. He broke through the ceiling of the 10th floor out of boredom by simply jumping up. Even during the test, it became obvious that Hyun-woo was a monster. And after such a story, Kwon-so became even more convinced of this. With a heavy heart, the involuntary hermit remembered everything he had gone through. And that is how he became stronger. One of his followers had left the tower earlier, Hyun-woo suddenly remembered. For some time, he lived between the 50th and 60th floors. There was one guy who fell behind the rest, wounded, weak, easy prey. Hyun-woo put on a show, and at first he was even mistaken for a monster. "Does he want to survive?" the mad hermit asked the wounded boy. He became his mentor and promised to guide him in everything. Then, Hyun-woo was foolish enough to create a martial art and take on a student to develop it. He was inspired by the plot of one manhwa, where the main character was imprisoned, and there the truth was revealed to him, which helped him escape. And then Hyun-woo thought that he should try the same thing. Madness is his middle name. He made the student balance bowls of water in combat stances. He gave the student unbearable weights as training equipment. He reproached the student when he couldn't hit stones with his bare hands, and he talked nonsense about chakras, like a real martial arts master. However, all he really did was catch the student when he was running away from unbearable hardships, for which Hyun-woo regretted that he had gone too far. The mad hermit was glad he wore a mask back then. He certainly wouldn't want to meet the disciple in this life. He returned to reality and asked his friends what had been happening in the world all these long years. They just chatted about this and that like old good friends. Late in the evening, he returned to the hostel, tired of the get-togethers and out of the habit of socializing. Lying on the bed, he called up the status window to check it again. Age was reset to 0. The restrictions on the growth of abilities that he pumped up to the maximum in the tower disappeared. The broken curse item was still hanging at the bottom of the screen. A knock on the door interrupted his exploration. Hyun-woo turned towards the door. An elderly security guard from the dormitory came to him and said that someone wanted to meet with Hyun-woo. The guard said that someone from the Aries Guild wanted to see him. Hyun-woo immediately waved it off, but the guard said that he had already promised to call him. The frightened elderly man asked to understand him and not refuse. The player decided to sort it out right away, since Aries would continue to bother him anyway. He agreed and went to the first floor of the dormitory. On the ground floor, there was a well-furnished reception room. 2 gangsters appeared to him for negotiations, one with a mustache and the other bald. The hunter immediately informed them that he was not going to join the guild, as before. Usagi handed Hyun-woo his business card and introduced himself as if he were a big shot. Had the young hunter thought of everything? The mustachioed geezer asked after that. "If Hyun-woo doesn't join their guild, there will be consequences," said the impudent gangster. He hinted that a novice hunter would not be able to develop properly. Someone else in Hyunwoo's place would have definitely tensed up upon hearing this, but not the crazy player. Kang Ben openly blackmailed Hyunwoo, saying that he wouldn't experience such hardships if he joined the guild. Hyunwoo quickly understood what the mustachioed guy with the habits of a bandit was getting at. "Don't be a menace to South Central," said the Mad Hunter. The bald brute behind him had already lunged at the guy, but Ben with his cockroach antennae stopped him. Having understood the guy's final decision, the bandit began to hide behind the entire Ares Guild. "The only thing mongrels can do is intimidate people with their pack," Hyunwoo answered him. He already knew everything about their guild. While having dinner with friends, they told Hyunwoo that a ticket was needed to enter the dungeons. "It's as if these dangerous places have become an amusement park." "The Ares Guild occupied more than half of the beginner dungeons in the country," Shuken said. "The guild was throwing money around left and right, buying up all the good dungeons for farming," said Little So-yeon. "Some newcomers are forced to buy expensive tickets from Ares and join them, handing over most of the profits," his friends told him. A strong bang, the sluggish negotiations ended, and a real dialogue began. "Ares people are everywhere, and Hyunwoo should watch his language," the mustachioed man told him smugly. The table flew away like a feather. The bandit threw it with one hand. The bald giant threw the table at the wall, causing it to shatter into pieces. Lysick received an A rank for basic physical skills, but he still couldn't reach Saitama's level. "Do you think you can defeat him?" the mustachioed man asked, to which Hyunwoo only grinned. Hyunwoo sighed at the scum he was dealing with. The idiots were furious at his reaction. The brat went completely nuts. "He came here," said the Mad Hunter, taking out the slap of fate. "Hitting with his hands is disgusting, so he uses a slipper," Hyunwoo told the gangsters. Lysick gritted his teeth. There had never been a newbie who behaved like this. In front of him was an A-rank hero. "He really wants to die," the bald man decided, and struck first. He screamed like a slaughtered boar and made a terrible face. And then he grabbed the impudent bread slicer with the slipper of fate. Hyunwoo didn't hit hard. He didn't want to become a killer, and he carefully controlled his powers. The slipper hit the mug hard, knocking the bald man out immediately. He flew into the wall like a bullet, breaking through it with a terrible roar. The cockroach's antennae began to move, but it was too late to think about escaping. Lysick reliably drilled his head into the wall like a battering ram. The hapless bandit just saw his main argument in any negotiations nullified before his eyes. "Let him just yelp something," Hyunwoo said, holding the remains of the slipper in his hands. Of course, Kang Ben saw that same video from the training test. Who didn't see it? It made a splash. Of course, he was aware that Hyunwoo was stronger than he seemed at first glance. But for the guild, he was still small fry. Even though the newbie now thought that he was the strongest, what will happen if he sees real power? The mustachioed man wondered. The power and influence gathered by the Ares Guild will bring a newcomer to his knees. The muscles of an ancient god, a Hercules in the flesh, the bald man was overwhelming with his mere appearance. At least that's how it should have been, the mustachioed bandit thought. It was supposed to be this way. It always was, but not this time. So when the hell did everything go wrong? The mustachioed man wondered. It's impossible to do something like this without any magic, the gangster told himself. And the most terrifying thing was that the boy had a second slipper. Hyunwoo approached the bandit inexorably, like inevitability itself. He pressed the mustachioed man until he unconsciously pressed himself against the wall. The terrifying slipper was approaching. Even half of this slipper would be enough to break a person's spine. The words stuck in the mustachioed man's throat. His former importance evaporated without a trace. "What he hates most is being threatened," Hyunwoo said. "Grit your teeth harder, idiot," the Mad Hunter grinned. And he flashed his slipper right in the mustachioed blackmailer's face. The starry sky sparkled with a scattering of lights over the night city. Due to the destruction, Hyunwoo stopped by Shin Kyung, who scolded him for his violent rampage and destruction. "Ares people are completely out of control. Very cruel," Shuken, a homeless friend, scolded. And what was cruel about them surprised the hunter while he was eating delicious strawberries. "No one touches the Ares Guild because they are terrible in their revenge," Shinken warned. Hyunwoo was surprised. "They may not let you join another guild," the faithful comrade continued, "or grab him quietly in the labyrinth. And that one, Shinken was dodging. He might even be killed," his friend worried, because there were no witnesses in the labyrinth. "The world has become more cruel," said Hyunwoo, carefreely eating strawberries. "The crazy hermit is the one who has become cruel," replied Shiken. Hyunwoo could join his guild or live freely as before, Shukyung suggested. "But the idea of freedom will have to be put on hold for now," Hyunwoo noted, biting into a strawberry. "What happened this time?" Shiken asked his homeless friend. "I have some business," the Mad Hermit answered vaguely, and asked if Shinken had heard about the Adiron Research Center. For many years, he was tormented by the question of why he could not leave the tower. How much doubt and anger had accumulated that it drove him to madness? Who created the tower? Why did they need to imprison him for 12 years? He wanted to learn their secrets and find the creators. Shiken asked why the hunter was interested in Adiron's dungeon. Hyun-woo asked to tell everything that was known about this place. Adiron Research Center, it's in a hard-to-pronounce area, and it's a C-rank dungeon. Rumor has it that it's great for developing newbies. The monsters in it are just as stupid as those in the tower. But why do you need this dungeon? Hyun-woo asked Shinken, but he evasively answered that he had to do something there. Shin-kyung warned his friend that he would not be able to get inside, much to Hyun-woo's surprise. The Ares Guild is taking over all the dungeons and Adiron is one of them, a friend said. Hyun-woo was outraged. What right do they have to do this, and where is the government looking? Was there really no monopoly law? He continued to be indignant, but Shinken reminded him that governments could not influence the world of hunters. Hunters are outside the state. They can even get away with murder if it is committed in a dungeon and no one moves. You can't investigate in these areas because they are too dangerous due to the monsters inside. Everything is being written off as an accident. A real mess, Hyun-woo noted. For the state, Ares is a profitable, growing company that pays taxes regularly, and they won't interfere with the affairs of hunters or influence them because of this. But what if we get there secretly? Hyun-woo asked. Shin-kyung warned him that the entrance was guarded by Ares, and they were not sleeping on guard. Then I'll get there another way, Hyun-woo replied. He was clearly planning something crazy. Always cautious, Shiken suspected something was wrong. He could simply break through the passage, the Mad Hermit reassured him. Shinken warned that this would definitely make him an enemy of the entire guild. Hyun-woo thought for a moment, but he was already their enemy, so everything was fine. There was a meeting in the Ares Guild discussing the Pedo Guild, which unexpectedly greatly interfered with Ares affairs in China. How long will this delay the guild? The director asked. China is delayed by 5 months. Russia and Japan are next in line for development. Director Hyuk Seong-woo listened to the report. He didn't care how long the plan took, he told his subordinates. The main thing is to do it faster than everyone else, insisted Director Sun-woo. The important thing is not to be the fastest, but to not be the slowest, he taught. The director let them go, pleased with the report he received. Having finished one task, Director Song-woo immediately began another. He was given the Kim Hyun-woo skill chart that the director had asked about earlier. Based on the video from the learning area, they created a table using analytics technology. They got their hands on various materials, a video of the second test by the orc wave. Many experts began to analyze it and make calculations. Physical data, agility, physical strength were at the highest level. Magic was absent. This department made a mistake. The head of the guild Ares doubted the results. Headmaster Yu Byung-wook said that he also doubted the results of the analysis, but the error could be within 1 rank. So it's true, Hyuk Song-woo agreed, clutching the papers with the report. Is he hired? The young guild leader asked with interest. The manager began to make excuses, but the head just waved it off. Unexpectedly, he noticed that it was for the best that they didn't hire Hyun-woo. The manager pretended to be surprised, but the director knew that his subordinate understood everything. If the guild hired this hunter, its business would go uphill. A newbie will cope well with dungeons and will develop. And this could become a threat to Hyuk Seon-woo and his position as the guild director. It's like a poisoned apple. It looks delicious, but you'll choke if you bite into it. If they accept him, the guild will fall apart from within, the slippery man thought. Chief Yu Byung left the director's room and was immediately called out with urgent news. What's up? He asked his subordinate, who was very out of breath and reported bad news. Trouble happened in the dungeon of Adiron. Yu Ben heard unexpected news. The weather on Mount Jongbongsan was sunny, and there were no signs of trouble on this gentle, fine day. At the entrance to the checkpoint, a lonely girl tried to get a pass into the dungeon, but she was refused. The red-haired girl with a bow on her back made a pitiful face and wanted to get a pass. The proud guards mocked her by offering her a deadly labyrinth to hunt. No skills, no money. The guard continued to mock, despite her sincere requests. He leaned towards the girl. His eyes flashed with concern, and he immediately revealed his rotten nature. Scum was eagerly recruited for such a position. The idiot was shamelessly flirting with a girl in a desperate situation and leaned right into her face. He promised to let her inside if the girl gave him her personal number. She was very taken aback by such offers. They were interrupted by another strange guest, dressed in a tracksuit and flip-flops on his bare feet. Uncle, there is no toilet. Go to the forest and do your business there, the annoying idiot sent Hyunwoo dismissively. But I don't need to go to the toilet. I need to go to the dungeon. Hyunwoo pretended to be a simpleton. This is not a place for games. The stupid monkey got angry. There is a dungeon with monsters here, he pointed out to the ignoramus in front of him. Hyunwoo was not at all embarrassed. He continued walking. He replied that he came for his own business. Or is the monkey so stupid that it hasn't figured it out yet? He asked the guard. Not only the security guard was taken aback, but also the poor girl next to him. He looks like a simpleton, talks all sorts of nonsense, and has clearly confused all the boarders. This won't do, said Hyunwoo, reaching for his slipper. Astrologers predict that he'll soon be learning politeness. The slipper rose up with meaning, as if pointing out to people their mistakes and excessive pride. Both guards, the lustful one and his friend, were dumbfounded. They hadn't been taught what to do with psychos. Come closer, Bandar logs. Hyunwoo beckoned to them, waving his slap and grinning devilishly. Well, he's really sick. At least you know that. The big guy began, but didn't finish. His angry speech was cut off mid-breath. The slipper lit a supernova by writing out an extra lesson in good manners. The first student was knocked out. He flew past the second guard so quickly that he didn't even understand anything, only his legs flashed. He looked at his friend in the cloud of dust, and at Hyunwoo, at his friend, and at Hyunwoo, and forgot all the words. The friend lay down to rest, proving once again that hunters are stronger than ordinary people. An ominous shadow grew behind his back. He wanted to cancel his subscription to politeness lessons, but it was too late. The guard began to pray involuntarily, and Hyunwoo complained that he had miscalculated his strength. Hey you, he said to the second guard, who decided to pretend to be a pillar in the hopes that he would get away with it. I need your clothes, Hyunwoo told him, in the classic way. Do you want to rest too? Hyunwoo asked him, making a scary face worthy of the demon Balok. And not bad, said Hyunwoo, trying on the new clothes. Clean leather shoes, shining. Very rare shoes worth 5 million. Enchanted for lightness, the money of a slow-witted poor fellow cried. I do have a conscience after all, said Hyunwoo, looking at the poor guard's bare feet. And he generously gave him his slippers of fate, just like that, from the master's shoulder. The guard was deeply depressed when Hyunwoo left, and the girl decided to go too. When did life take a wrong turn, the unlucky watchman wondered, while his friend dozed peacefully off to one side. There was a real commotion at the Seoul Guild headquarters when So-yeon learned that Hyunwoo was just released to Adorn's lab. They didn't let him go, but he left on his own. Shin-ken justified himself to his grumpy friend, but she had once been a sweet little girl. He had expected to calmly drink a cup of coffee, but the girl nagged him with her angelic voice. She was worried about the crazy hermit, as if he were her boyfriend who noticed Shin-ken, but the girl brushed off his barbs. What could he do if their antisocial hermit friend preferred to act alone? The girl lowered her beautiful eyes. She herself understood the absurdity of the situation, where she had to look after a savage. And yet the situation was not easy. Now Hyunwoo was at odds with an entire guild, not the last in the rankings and very cruel. But what is, said Shin-ken, clutching his cup of coffee. He himself was not delighted. In the past, Hyunwoo had always had a calm disposition and acted in a balanced manner. He was a rock that could be leaned on. But it was not always like this. Sometimes life drove him into a corner. They always looked at his broad back because he protected them like a true leader. However, everything changed. The calm and confident Hyunwoo disappeared as soon as enemies stood in his way. Then the madman in him would awaken, and all his bad character would manifest itself on his enemies. The friends sighed heavily. Hyunwoo's character had become even tougher over the 12 years, so they understood why he was like that. But should they worry about someone who evaporates rocks with their bare hands? The friends discussed while Hyunwoo strolled around the lab. Rather than worrying about his enemies, Hyunwoo walked through the dark, empty corridors without a care in the world. The friends reassured themselves that there was little they could do to influence things. His feet moved easily and freely in these polished shoes, which was especially pleasant since he usually used flip-flops. Next time I'll bring my pants too, Hyunwoo thought. Sometimes it's very useful to have enemies for your prosperity. If his words were true, Shin-ken continued, recalling his conversation with Hyunwoo yesterday about the Aries Guild. What do you mean? So-yeon was surprised. Does he really know anything about Hyunwoo's abilities? The girl thought. Shin-ken looked at her conspiratorially, wondering whether he should tell his lively friend everything. The news surprised the girl. Could it really be true? She couldn't believe her ears. The laboratory looked abandoned. Darkness all around. Dusty suspension everywhere instead of air. and only the groaning of monsters broke the silence. Even the scientific monsters had fangs, albeit small ones, one of which wandered through the empty corridors in search of experimental samples. The chimera of a goblin and a robocop brandished a surgical scalpel, croaking in an extraterrestrial dialect. A shot for someone, an injection. The boss of this level wandered alone, frowning terribly, lighting his way with his eyes and headlights. Several hunters observed this monster. The Ares Guild left it alive because it did not bring in money. In the room next to the boss, the trio settled down and figured out what to do next. Two guys were waiting for what the girl in the mask would decide. The guy in the rugby jacket insisted on catching the boss, yet they paid a bribe to get into this lab. The brown-haired girl doubted that if their skills were top-notch, they wouldn't have to resort to such tricks. Helmet Head believed that there should be enough strength. The boss had a weak attack and good defense. He would not survive a long battle. But the girl leader did not want to take such an unjustified risk and delayed the answer. There were too many variables. But then, throwing aside these heavy thoughts, he prepared for battle. Our motto is stupidity and courage. The trio really wanted to raise their level. They were ready to pounce on a lone target like street punks, but suddenly noticed an uninvited guest. Who is this? They wondered. The man didn't look like a hunter, and sportswear was not among the most common pieces of equipment. The unexpected guest stood in the shadow of the boss without hiding at all. He looked completely open and confident. Or just crazy. The boss wasn't particularly intelligent, and it looked like he bought his diploma too. He noticed Hyun-woo and creaked disgustingly. Something about tests. Maybe an enema for the warm-up or 5 liters of blood for analysis, muttered the zombie Robocop in his lisping voice. In the distant past, when Hyun-woo was still a child, he ended up in an orphanage. Don't be naughty. Don't show your weakness to anyone. His older, unlucky brother instructed him. And also listen to your teachers. He let go of empty formalities to the child who was just beginning to understand life. And don't say anything unnecessary. He continued his meaningless conversation. But the boy was not looking at this at all, and was carefully remembering what he saw. Fate treated him cruelly. His parents had just died in a car accident, and his brother had already sent him to an orphanage, taking his inheritance into his hands. So the boy learned his most important lesson in life. Never trust anyone, don't expect good, don't ask for mercy, and no pity. A zombie pathologist in iron pants bent over a pathetic little man to abuse him. Some of his unimaginable, incomprehensible purpose devices were clearly short-circuiting electricity, apparently so that he could move faster. Hyun-woo couldn't stand the horrible harassment of the monster who hadn't even finished his honey and interrupted his empty chatter. But it's unlikely that the foolish head understood the language of words. After all, the only science in this place was the name. The monster licked its lips carnivorously, only to get his stupid face hit with a light kick from Hyun-woo. The trio of brave hunters sat to the side with stupid faces. Their whole adventure just ended before it began. Hyun-woo landed softly on the concrete floor of the lab. Not a single shoe was damaged. Like a true action hero, he didn't turn around to see the guts of a dumb monster explode, who was only good at spouting pseudoscientific nonsense. The hunters slowly flowed onto the cold floor from the cruelty they saw, glad that they were not in the place of the monster. "One is ready," Hyun-woo muttered. "Time for the next one, in the forest village." He tapped on the status window. The 3 brave ones left the shelter, went out to look at the remains of the terrible boss, but after looking closely, the girl was able to recognize the mysterious hunter. It's hard not to recognize the person in the first trends of the network. Now in the light, they were able to recognize an experienced player. In the deep basement of the Ares Guild, 2 important guild bosses met. "And what is the reason for your visit?" asked Woo Chung-myung, the former head of the administrative department. It was a special report. Yu Ben handed his colleague a folder with documents. 2 whole A-rank skills, Woo Chung exclaimed. "And this from a newly hatched newbie from the tower?" He asked again, looking through Hyun-woo's detailed file. The assessment couldn't be 100%, perhaps the target was even stronger. "Strong?" The head of the department frowned. "Not just strong, but a real monster," he concluded. "Nothing will happen," he asked, holding the folder at his throat, grinning ominously. "We were told to just do harm," Yu Ben objected. "However, no body, no case, no one will ask if the target trips and falls on a knife." "Isn't it wonderful to get rid of this nuisance?" asked Woo Cheong. "This guy brazenly entered Ares' dungeon, beat up the guards, and this is a very unhealthy precedent." "That's right," Yu Ben confirmed. "Because of Hyun-woo, the reputation of the entire guild could suffer. We're not shameful wolves." "Oh, no need to worry." Wu Zhong noticed and grinned confidently. With Hyunwoo's skills, it would be hard to just hurt him. He laughed. How fortunate that the guild leader is busy with China, and it is possible to quietly deal with the upstart, and even get the leader's recognition later. Wu Chong rejoiced. Having decided this issue, the conspirators headed to the elevator. "We are sending people to China," Yu Byung asked. "It's all because of the Pedo Guild. They were created 2 years ago and have already taken over half of China's dungeons. Their leader left the tower only 4 years ago, but the tower turned her into a real monster, and her followers are incredibly strong. But what is most surprising is that she is ranked 5th in the world, as if the spirit of Qing Shi Huang has been reborn in her. Nobody knows anything." In the smoke of incense stood a girl with a skull tattoo. The guild cannot waste resources, so the protruding nail must be hammered in while all forces are directed to China. Wu Chong noted, "A special specialist is needed." What a disgusting face. Hyunwoo made faces at the smartphone's selfie camera. He admired what technology had come to as he sat in Shinken's living room, rejoicing like a child. Now a bird will fly out. He clicked the camera for the 100th time, filming everything in a row. All digital innovations were a novelty for a hermit with 12 years of experience. Once a boy and then no longer a boy, Hyunwoo learned about games, videos, music, and risked drowning forever in the world of digital networks. The Soul Guild owns the Forest Village dungeon, Shinken told him. But his friend could not be brought back. The magic of the internet was stronger. "Jigi, I'll have the best farm," the crazy hermit Hyunwoo whispered to himself. "But there won't be a boss," Shin Kyung informed the teenager in front of him. The information arrived with a giraffe's delay, about 7 seconds, until the meaning of what was said reached the gaming nerd. "What do you mean the boss is gone?" he cried out. "What do you mean they caught him a few weeks ago?" The new information significantly changed the whole thing. "Monsters appear in the tower every day. Regular ones and bosses no matter how many you kill," Shin Ken explained. "But the dungeons of the world outside the tower, other ordinary monsters also respawn ad infinitum. I don't want a farm." But bosses, unlike mobs, have a full social package, paid vacation, pension, and holidays. In short, they need time. "How long would it take?" Hyunwoo asked. And when he received the answer that it would take a month, he almost started foaming at the mouth. But he was lucky, according to the schedule. The monster was coming out of vacation in a couple of days so he could be visited, Shinken said. "But what about the visible swamp?" Hyunwoo asked. But there was no information on this object. The swamps belonged to the Aries Guild. Shinken suggested looking for more information, but Hyunwoo had already withdrawn into himself. For His Majesty to be so tense because of the monster, it would never happen. He fell back again to support the sofa when Shinken asked him to register with the association. The equipment was of little interest to the mad hermit, who won even naked. But at the word money, his conditioned Pavlovian reflex was triggered. It turned out that you can get money if you pass the test every 2 or 3 months and confirm your rank. Having heard such wonderful news, the homeless man, the leader of the hermits, became very excited and was ready to go to the certification in the middle of the night. In the morning, they went to the place where the hunter's abilities were measured. A large building in the center of the city spoke of the high status of hunters in society. The legendary slaps of fate of the great hermit, who had finally decided to stop being a dependent, slapped across the floor of the building. They entered the association building like real tough guys. It was hard not to recognize them. But the idiot in the reception area succeeded, however. This is due to the appearance of Hyunwoo, who has not changed since leaving the tower, still the same wild one. They came to register. He asked the usual question to a strange guy in a suit, and received the answer, Kim Hyunwoo. The name nevertheless flew around the world and sounded very familiar. The tester immediately clarified whether this was the one who returned from the tower after 12 years. "That's right," the shaggy man confirmed, thinking about how to quickly get the money for registration. The association official frowned. This was definitely the man, and they had already asked about him today. That strange blonde guy, who looked a little crazy, asked about Kim Hyunwoo, a yellow-mouthed creature that has nothing special about it, but about which there are already so many rumors and noise, the tester thought while examining the hunter. Having confirmed all the formalities, he handed the shaggy hermit a strange object and pointed to the projector in the middle of the room. The object looked as if the demon had been put under a press and turned into a compact cube with an eye sticking out. The principle is simple. As soon as you touched it, it showed a status window and all the characteristics of the hunter who held it. Hyunwoo grabbed the demon cube and the projector opposite him lit up, taking measurements. At rank maximum, the tester was thinking while they waited for the calculations. Maybe it's a plus, since he's so famous. After all, there's no smoke without fire. But imagine his surprise when he saw the result. "That's all?" asked the bored hermit. "Give me my money already," he thought. But suddenly he heard a suspicious noise, and the fuse of the seat caught fire. The tester screamed like a berserker on his way to Valhalla. Hyun-woo barely dodged the spitting spray. How is this possible? A scream was heard throughout the entire association building. The news spread like hot potato pies. The World Wide Web of rumors was already in full swing, discussing the experienced player. The news stunned and turned all ideas about normality upside down. All of Hyun-woo's A-rank skills, except for magic, are something to envy. Hyun-woo was driving in the car and listening to the video of the reactions to his testing. But what was even more surprising was that they had barely left the building when rumors had already spread like wildfire everywhere. "Nothing special," Shin-ken noted, squeezing the polygonal steering wheel. After all, his friend is a celebrity. People dream of finding out a little more about him. Moreover, just recently Hyun-woo caused a stir in the dungeons of Ares, turning everything upside down there. "You don't care," but Shin-ken stopped short when he turned to his friend, clearly worried about him. The Ares Guild definitely made inquiries and got wind of everything, including today's inspection. They definitely won't leave Hyun-woo alone. "Be careful," he said, and wanted to add, "fool." But he was too well brought up. "Ares really are dangerous people," Shin-ken continued. But when he didn't receive an answer, he became indignant. Instead, the hermit Hyun-woo, as befits a madman, giggled nastily, distracting the driver from driving. He definitely has 8th grader syndrome. Hyun-woo, ignoring the traffic rules, shoved the screen into Shin-kyung's face. The video showed a loading screen in the game that appeared when completing dungeons. Hyun-woo played the dungeon because he couldn't live without them anymore. "Just look at that idiotic pose and strange aura," laughed Shin-ken's frivolous friend. In the video, there was Shim-kyung, but the crazy hermit Hyun-woo didn't realize it right away. He continued to tease his friend without realizing it, ridiculing his fighting techniques. Shin-ken, who had long since become an adult, could not get used to the fact that his friend was a little out of touch with life. He again said that it was him on the video. The gears in the shaggy hermit's head began to grind with effort. How awkward that turned out to be. There was an awkward silence. "My friend and I are idiots," Shin-ken thought. But what can you expect from the poor? Hyun-woo still didn't know what to say and decided to pretend to be a mannequin. Maybe it would work. It's a miracle that he didn't forget his speech while playing the role of Rapunzel. The silence dragged on. Hyun-woo strained to remember what normal people do in such situations. Maybe dance naked and diffuse the situation. Then it dawned on him that he just needed to change the subject, and he decided to ask his friend a question. "The rubric asks a stupid question on the screen, and you are not doing anything at all," asked Hyun-woo. He asked why Shin-ken was not doing anything, even though he was also the guild leader. Teaching a fool will only spoil him, thought Shin-ken, and asked a counter-question about why he thought the guild leader might not be busy. Even now, he was wasting his precious free time on a homeless hermit without a residence permit. But it didn't seem like he appreciated it. The empty corridors of the Ares Guild office gave off a cold feeling, as if it were a king's palace. Yuben was in a dark confusion. News came from the Hunter Testing Center. "A real monster. Now it's clear why the boss wants to deal with him," confirmed Woo Chung. Yuben felt the tension. It was so tight that it could bite off a crowbar. "It's also too tight," thought Woo Chung. But he wondered out loud about the thoughts of his colleague in the dangerous business. "Don't worry," said Woo Chung. "I'm worried myself, but we'll definitely deal with this threat." He grinned maliciously. He said a name and he said it with meaning, Shin Chong-gun. Yuben was distracted from his heavy thoughts and asked again excitedly, "An S-rank hunter from China, as high-ranking as Hyun-woo, but far more dangerous." "Now the damned Hyun-woo will eat the earth and beg for mercy," the bandit grinned evilly. It was a moonlit night in the dungeon of the forest village. The friends descended here without any problems, because it was run by the Shin-ken Guild. They timed it perfectly to come here a minute before the boss appeared. It would still be enough for one hit. They took an assistant with them to carry everything they needed. How useful it is to have a servant, thought Hyun-woo, who lived like a hermit. They had dug deep into the forest without the low-ranking guide boy Hyun-woo would have had to tear down the entire forest to get out. However, they were not alone here, although they did not know it, and walked without hiding. The man with still good teeth smiled while he could. Hyun-woo once again demonstrated his attention to people. After half an hour of walking together, he finally asked who was with them. The boy introduced himself as Park Ga-moon. Apparently a simpleton. What can you expect from him? He is Frodo Baggins's loyal companion, Shinken explained, and will collect loot from the monster and do all the dirty work. If you catch a boss, you can get items from him and get money for them. Money? It clicked in the head of the penniless hermit. A fortune for the boss, where to spend so much? Shinken stopped, thinking about how to tell his friend more gently that he was a homeless person and looked the part. Normal people don't walk around everywhere in sweatpants and flip-flops with bare feet. Young Samuus Gamgee took out his phone and asked to take a souvenir photo with celebrities. Hyunwoo seemed to have once again discovered the presence of a person next to him. In principle, he didn't care when he was filmed, but he still asked what it was for. Park Ga-moon began to tell the inmate about video hosting sites, advertising, views, and earnings. Okay, Hyunwoo gave the go-ahead, including the player's abilities in the monopoly of the Mac level. You are 2, I am 8. Everyone is fair and equal, I counted. The group moved on, Shin Kyung and Hyunwoo walking in front, while Park Ga-moon broadcasted. Shinken handed the hermit a folded piece of paper. Woo Hyun unfolded it, trying to figure out what he was looking at. Oh, how long ago it had been since he graduated from school, he thought. The forest village is a labyrinth, and it is difficult to wander around in it. Hyunwoo carefully looked at the map. In vain, he skipped geography lessons. He looked more closely in the dim moonlight, wondering whether it was north or south above. The map looked like a satellite image, but where did satellites come from in the dungeons? Hyunwoo wondered. It's not clear at all. He twisted it this way and that, but he was embarrassed to ask. They'd call him stupid. What a mess, the hermit thought. To hell with it, Woo Hyun just threw away the useless piece of paper. I'll figure it out somehow, he thought. He simply walked up to the tree and estimated the direction in which the boss should be. Hyunwoo smiled, anticipating easy money, and turned to their companion. Park Ga-moon wanted to remind me of his name, but he didn't dare, after all. He was a timid guy. Film. Everything well, the greedy hermit with no permanent place of residence told him. And yet, Paga didn't quite understand what this strange man would do. Hyunwoo stood up to strike. Everything had to be done effectively, in one take. Oh, the work of professional YouTube stars is hard. He concentrated and launched his signature plasma-burning strike. The ionized gas around his fist sparkled like a sheaf of blue sparks, the fist instantly heating the air to thousands of degrees. He swung wider to make it flare up more powerfully and brightly, which is not something you do for the sake of show. With You is the Evening Lumberjacks program. The tree in front of him was all covered in fire. The shockwave went up, cutting it down the middle. It was the first time Park Ga-moon had seen something like this, and the bright light from the flashes blinded his eyes. The tree in the clearing evaporated, along with the ground beneath it and everything else that was within the radius of destruction. Some ogre was caught off guard. The guy wanted to say that where had he ever seen someone working so hard on the very first day after vacation, but his toothy mouth was not well suited for that. Even the experienced Shinken was impressed by such a demonstration, not to mention their porter, who almost fell on his butt in surprise. But you have to give the boy his due. He held up well in the face of real monsters. We continue the program Get to Know the Local Flora and Fauna with Hyunwoo. Subscribe and like. In one hit, Hyunwoo cleared the way to the boss. To hell with the terrible geography book, he can handle it without maps. The dissatisfied underground employee waved his hands indignantly. His southern temperament was showing. These little people didn't understand anything at all. Hyunwoo made a point of light, once again not sparing his slaps. In one movement, he soared toward the ogre's forked head, who waved him off with a cry of, "Hooligans are depriving me of my sight." But no one understood him. Free delivery of kicks arrived. Hyunwoo was approaching the ogre. He landed deftly on his shoulder, much to the honest dungeon director's concern that the guest might fall and get hurt. A powerful kick rejected his polite address. A supernova flared from his blow. The ogre fell on his back. He was definitely going to the hospital. The master of writing out certificates for people, and not only for a sanatorium, landed from above. Newcomer Park Ga-moon barely had time to focus the camera. A true hero, a hermit, a forester, a hunter, and simply a good person, Hyunwoo proudly showed off on the body of the unfortunate dungeon director. Park Ga-moon cried with happiness. It seemed like he felt an insane amount of sympathy for the homeless hermits. In the shade of the trees, sitting on a branch like a chicken on a perch, a proud and lonely representative of the feathered race watched them. An hour earlier, the atmosphere in the Aries Guild office was filled with excitement and optimism. "Have you checked everything yet?" asked Woo Chung, his late guest. Shin Chung-gong sat at the table like an ill-mannered idiot with no manners, his feet up on the table as if there was no one else to sit under. Sean Gang agreed, wondering what he was doing there. Why was Wu Chung sitting there? Was he really just airing himself out, the bastard? But he kept quiet. He really is a monster of legend, Sean Gunn confirmed with a smug grin. Hyun Woo only had physical abilities, no magic, which was surprising. However, where there is strength, there is also weakness. No one is invulnerable, Sean Gan continued. It was incredibly easy to spot his weaknesses, he noted with a confident air. Wu Zhong also grinned, understanding where this wild, unmannered hunter was heading. They knew exactly where he would appear next. It would be their dungeon, the visible swamp. The creepy and self-confident guy Sean Gunn jumped up from the table in one movement. It looks like he really trained him for a long time. He will go ahead and prepare everything. The birds were chirping, a light breeze was blowing, the leaves were rustling, nothing foreshadowed trouble. Hyun Woo went out for a walk to the swamp. As usual, he was in no hurry, letting the wind move his thick hair, and yet he felt a strange threat, his hermit's intuition making itself known. He felt a slight vibration in his pocket and didn't immediately understand what it was. After all, he had only recently gotten a phone. He looked at the screen in surprise. Not many people could contact the lonely hermit. Little so. Yan wrote to him, wanting to know about his plans for today. Hyun Woo sighed. He thought that he would get a phone and cute beauties would write to him. But so far only grumpy girlfriends were writing. And yet he understood that his friends were worried about him. They behaved just like adults, which made Hyun Woo feel like a child. Aries. Not Aries. What difference does it make who and how? After all, it's he who's great, thought Hyun Woo. Earlier, when the beautiful So Yeon was sitting in front of him, she asked him why he needed Aries' dungeon. Sinner Hyun Woo returned to reality and got out of the internet. But what can you expect from a hermit with low social skills? He answered her question evasively. He had business there, that's all, with his girlfriend. Hyun Woo continued to wriggle like an eel in a frying pan, but the terrible force of feminine charm was pressing on him. It would anger Aries just a little, he replied, grabbing his strawberry smoothie, not knowing how else to get out of direct questions. So Yeon made a cute cat face and looked at him worriedly. She could only sigh. Her friend was completely impenetrable, a good quality in battle, but difficult to communicate with. And yet she decided to press him to get a direct answer. He was bothering her too much. Of course, she understood that he was not someone to worry about too much, but you can't be sure of everything. The new video from the forest village confirmed his strength. He is definitely not a weakling who can be offended by any passerby. In front of her sat a very problematic specimen of a hermit, who easily looked for trouble on his head, and they found him. In any case, I must act quickly, little. So Yeon instructed him in her thin but firm voice. Visible Swamp is an A-rank dungeon, and it is perfect for staying unnoticed and avoiding unnecessary risks. On the day the boss appears, Aries will definitely lead a raid to kill him. So Yeon continued. Hyun Woo listened to her attentively, yet she managed to attract his attention. He still saw her as the schoolgirl with whom he cleared the tower. He thanked her carelessly, as if he had no intention of breaking into an enemy base where 100 dangers could await him. He told her not to worry, but everything went wrong from the very first minutes. In front of him stood a guild guard, with a Chinese broadsword at the ready, and he was frankly shaking with fear, and perhaps he had already become a little lighter. The guard shouted loudly. When dogs are afraid, they also bark loudly to call their owner, Hyun Woo thought. So Yeon haunted him even in his memories, even though she had told him not to be seen by Aries' guards. How tiring, Hyun Woo said. It's the same thing every time. Everyone's screaming loudly and flying off with one serve. No fun. Couldn't they have reacted differently? Offered tea? Asked politely? But no, it's the same thing. Stop. Who goes there? Hyun Woo was indignant. And then you immediately get into a fight even though you know that you can't win? Hyun Woo continued. You just can't learn. A samurai has no goal, only a path, you understand? Thought Aries' guard, and was terribly angry. He would have shouted something harsher, but he was not allowed to, and rushed into the attack. The fate of Aries' simple guards is hard, but they are paid for it. You see a bright flash. It's the light of broken hopes and dreams. Hyun Woo's fist is back in action. Once upon a time, he was led by the road of adventure, and then he met Hyun Woo, and only a light smoke went in the wind. They're pestering me, thought Hyun Woo. I told them I had business, and they gave me my pass, but I gave it to them. It's good that he had two of them at once. Hyun Woo sighed heavily. What kind of organization is this, Aries? He doesn't spare his subordinates at all. The foot sank into the soft soil. The quagmire was very close. He walked right into the center of the swamp and looked around. The boss was definitely nearby. Amber eyes with a slit predatorily aimed at the new prey. a lonely, defenseless target so close you could smell him. The predator rushed to attack like a cocked mechanism. A real death machine will emerge from the swamp on heavy, short legs. It kicked up a spray of water and mud all around and paddled powerfully through the soft ground. Hyunwoo stopped. His trick worked. As soon as he pretended to be easy prey, all your monsters would rush to attack. The boss appeared before him. A huge, ancient fossil with the boring name Mega Alligator. Hyunwoo recognized the beast because So Yeon had taken the time to tell him about it in detail. However, everything that Hyunwoo remembered concerned the cost of skin and teeth, which meant that the monster had to be caught whole without damaging the skin. This is a pension increase for a lonely hermit, Hyunwoo thought. He gave his signature grin and activated the orthodox bending mode. The fossil dinosaur has not seen such impacts since the Chicxulub asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. The ancient lizard immediately became despondent, deflated, and turned sour. The hunt somehow didn't go well right away. "I'll kill him quickly and rip off his skin," animal lover Hyunwoo told the future bag. But the walking antiquity was not going to give up. He had experienced worse in his long chronicle. You can always use a tactical retreat, not to be confused with a panic flight. Hyunwoo reacted instantly. A valuable resource cannot be let go. He had already thought about what kind of wallet and boots he would have. He quickly and firmly grabbed the fleeing lizard. Time to make money. The crocodile had two tails at once, so it was even easier to hold him. And for a few moments he turned into a hole digger. "Carousel, carousel, it's joy for us," Hyunwoo sang happily with a demonic grin. The crocodile remembered the dinosaurs, how they fell and were replaced by weak rodents. But when, say, everything went wrong, he was perplexed. Having experienced an overload of 9, Megalligator realized that he would never become an astronaut. It was too much for him. He flew into the rock with all his might, raising a cloud of dust around him. This is a good place to lie, the lizard thought. Maybe they will take him for a fossil embedded in a stone, send him to a museum to rest. But on the other hand, what this Pleistocene miscarriage allows itself, the crocodile remembered its pride of cold-bloodedness. "To die not twice," said the ancient warrior. He despised death, squeezing out a stingy tear. "I lived a good life, and that means the end should be bright." The monster went into battle again. An aura of fighting determination enveloped his body. A proud warrior ready for a fight to the death. Hyunwoo had no idea that someone else was watching his fight from the sidelines, waiting for their moment. Sean-gun grinned contentedly. Everything was going exactly as he had planned. Only old men go into battle. The crocodile launched his body like a torpedo straight at Hyunwoo. "Great, another round." A real boss always has a second phase, the mad hermit rejoiced. Suddenly, an unclear force pulled him and threw him off balance. Red chains, like hot metal, enveloped his legs, not allowing him to move. What about the samurai spirit and honor, Hyunwoo thought. But asking the boss to wait was not an option. "That's it," the killer, Sean-gun, rejoiced. "Now the bird will be gobbled up, feathers and all." The chains held him as if he was in quicksand. The more he moved, the more he sank. Hyunwoo didn't expect such an attack. The crocodile's mouth was ready to slam shut over him like a giant stapler and pierce him. Easy money. Sean-gun was already mentally imagining how to spend it in the best brothels in the country. He did not break away until the very end. Since he can't move his legs, he still has his hands. So Hyunwoo grabbed the ground tightly. And only in this way was he able to dodge the torpedo in the face of the alligator, its mouth loudly clicking shut. Taking advantage of this moment, the cowardly crocodile jumped into the water. "Wait," thought Hyunwoo. "What about the crocodile's skin boots?" Both the wallet and the bag communicated well. He got upset and looked at his feet. The unknown object was still preventing him from moving his legs, tightly entangling them and digging deeper and deeper. "Magic chains," Sean-gun answered the unasked question. Now he could show himself without any fear of his opponent. And what can he do with his strength if he is now sitting there miserable with a dirty face? "Mud and chains suit you just fine," Sean-gun said, grinning contentedly, feeling in control of the situation. Another rude guy, thought Hyunwoo. Not only did he not say hello, but his bag also ran away. Now what's the point of skinning him? Sean-gun came down closer, holding red chains of magic in his hands. Time for a super villainous performance. "I'm Batman" almost escaped his lips, but he corrected himself in time and said that he was a hunter from the Ares Guild. "I'm bragging terribly." "You should see a psychiatrist for treatment for delusions of grandeur," thought Hyunwoo. "What kind of killer is he who calls himself a killer?" he asked. "Do you think he's the smartest?" Sean-gun asked him as he approached. "Now he'll show him how big the world is." "You may be strong," Sean-gun continued, "but strength isn't everything. You can spin a heavy dinosaur around like a feather, the bounty hunter noted. Even if you can kill a two-headed ogre with one blow like a fucking cheater, Sean Gunn said evenly. But even if you were 100 times stronger, what could you do while bound by these chains? The bandit asked him, with a malicious grin. The chains kept getting more and more tangled around Hyun-woo, like wired headphones. The longer it went on, the more knots there were. But it didn't bother him. Suddenly, he discovered that he couldn't break them. A very unusual skill was used on him. These are not simple chains, but magical ones. Magical, the villain helpfully explained. Thanks to him for the details, Hyun-woo thought. The only way to break them apart was with another A-rank magic. The noble bandit willingly revealed the weaknesses of his technique to the victim. Hyun-woo looked deeply stunned by this discovery, looking ahead as if desperately searching for a way out of the situation. He started to act like a fool, asking the bandit again what was already obvious. Sean Gunn got angry. Hyun-woo asked for the third time if he really couldn't get out, playing the role of a confused victim. Sean Gunn gritted his teeth. The boy in front of him didn't understand, or didn't want to understand, the situation he found himself in. But he had seen this before. Everyone he worked with behaved the same way. They pretend to be calm, throw dust in the eyes, but in fact they are desperately thinking about how to get out of it. Sean Gunn has strengthened the magic of the chains. These hapless blockheads are trying to escape with stupid tricks, he continued, but Hyun-woo remained impervious. With a sharp movement, he drew his hidden blade. It was time to finish the job. He had killed many such naive guys. Sean Gunn rushed forward to add another name to his death list. His attack filled the blade with a purple glow. Hyun-woo could barely keep up with it with his eyes. Just before the blow, he suddenly raised his hands up and blocked it. But this attack had a second effect. Sean Gunn used the technique of deadly poison. There was an explosion, and everything around was illuminated by an ultraviolet flash. If anyone had been fighting now, they would have definitely gone blind. Sean Gunn grinned contentedly. His opponent was a pathetic, worthless brave man. Now he would be food for the swampworms. In the thick smoke that rose after the impact, it was difficult to see anything further than an outstretched arm. Gradually, the smoke cleared, and a shadow in the form of a human figure appeared where Hyun-woo had been sitting. Sean Gunn tensed. This was not the effect he expected to see at all. The smoke prevented him from seeing everything in front of him properly. To his great surprise, once the dust settled a little, he saw Hyun-woo completely unharmed. He continued to act like a fool who didn't even understand what had happened, or simply didn't even notice the flea attack. Sean Gunn experienced a serious dissonance between expectations and reality, something he had never seen before. His attack didn't work, didn't leave a single scratch, didn't even wrinkle the clothes, as if they were special magical armor. And at that moment he shuddered. His legs unconsciously began to walk in the opposite direction. Gradually, it began to dawn on him what had happened, and he imperceptibly quickened his pace. Unable to withstand the colossal pressure, he ran away in horror like a seasoned trotter. His heart was about to stop when Hyun-woo's shadow grew in front of him again at a terrifying speed. The last thing he saw was a fist flying into his face, and then everything was a blur. Having received a blow, he flew back to the tree behind him. Another person in his place or a monster would have turned to dust from such a blow. But Sean Gunn survived. Although he winced from the hellish pain, he hit his whole body against the tree. It was as if the chains had stopped holding Hyun-woo back, and he moved completely freely. His fallen opponent had fused with the tree, leaving a deep dent in it. Even the dense wood felt like soft soil underfoot. Now it was Hyun-woo's turn to torment the villain. "You should have tied up your whole body," he noted. Sean Gunn couldn't believe his eyes. His technique was completely useless after hundreds of uses. The chains slowly spilled onto Hyun-woo's legs, much to Sean Gunn's horror. Hyun-woo demonstratively raised his hand, which was wrapped in a chain that had noticeably loosened. The light kick of the slipper lit up. Hyun-woo had no intention of sparing the enemy. From the kick, the long-suffering tree collapsed as if it had been cut down, along with Sean Gunn. Hyun-woo grabbed him tighter. It was time to repeat the ride. Sean Gunn was clearly not thrilled. He had never liked amusement parks since he was a child and was very uncomfortable being the victim. Hyun-woo began to quote the great Chinese strategist, "Whoever comes to us with what and for what reason, he does so, and for that reason," he said, swinging his arm harder. The overload pressed Sean Gunn even harder into the tree. He no longer knew what was worse, the shame of defeat, or this torment. Meanwhile, the crocodile in the swamp was doing what he usually did, pretending to be a log and reflecting a little on his behavior. He was quietly and peacefully floating in a small lake, not bothering anyone, and fixing a Primus stove. Suddenly, an ominous shadow loomed over him. Something was quickly approaching him. The shadow covered the entire sky, but the reptile's eyes did not allow him to look up and understand what it was. A huge log with Sean gun on top hit the crocodile with great force, causing a fountain of spray. Hyunwoo made a great throw in the garage key. 2 goals in 1 go. He looked at the surrounding landscape with the eyes of an investigator. An unlucky hunter chased a squirrel up a tree. It fell, and a crocodile grabbed it in the river. It looked like it was an unlucky nudist hunter, a squirrel catcher. That's what anyone would think, Hyunwoo thought. The status window lit up blue, and a notification arrived. Having defeated the boss, he received the lower title it was listed there. Meanwhile, in the Ares Guild office, someone was diligently washing down valerian with expensive whiskey. Shinchong Gong was dead, received a short report from Wu Chong. There was no other information after all, the hunter was working alone. All this meant that a very large and furry little animal had just stepped on all his plans. A small investigation established that the body of the unsuccessful killer was already deep at the bottom of the swamp. The monsters definitely ate the remains. No body, no case. But he will still have to answer, Sean Gan thought to himself. He would probably have launched himself to the moon from the burning of his buttocks, but the valerian had already begun to work. Or maybe it was a liter of elite whiskey without a snack. Shinjong Gang is an elite assassin with 2 S-rank skills, read his file by Wu Zhong. And this Shincheng Gang, who acted so boastfully, killed Kim Hyun-woo, the worried office worker wondered. Everything that happened seemed like a devilish prank, someone's mockery. This was unbearable. Wu Chung ground his teeth in anger. Then he imagined what his boss might do to him when he found out about the spent asset, which would guarantee a week of constipation. It was a quiet night in a residential area of Seoul. The stars were sparkling outside the window, and the city was drowning in the lights of lanterns. Hyun-woo lay in complete prostration on the sofa in Shin Kyung's living room, as befits an unemployed slacker. A fly. A fly on the ceiling. And how does it stay there? He thought, staring up. No matter how much he thought, he still could not understand the quirks of nature and existence. But still, he firmly decided to figure it out and called up the status window. The familiar blue hologram appeared in front of him like a projector screen, its light making his eyes hurt. He couldn't quite make sense of the line under his name, where the title was listed, Temporary Guardian. And the ability was added, the right to information, he wondered, and with the size of the melons it would work. And yet I couldn't know how to use it, because I had never seen such changes in the system. He also received an invitation, without an exact location, but with a countdown timer. Hyun-woo continued to puzzle over this for a long time, but no matter how much he looked, he couldn't understand it anymore. Hyun-woo's adult and responsible friend returned to the apartment and greeted his unemployed comrade. Knowing how useless Hyun-woo was in housework, since he hadn't lived in the house for over a decade, Shin Kyung asked if he had had dinner. Suddenly, it dawned on Hyun-woo. Wait, don't press anything, let me try, he said to Shin Kyung. Hyun-woo decided to test the new ability of the right to information. It has to work somehow. Abracadabra. He said the words of activation and looked closely at his friend. A window of Shin Kyung's status appeared in front of Hyun-woo's face, but it didn't show any new information. How the hell do I use this garbage? He blurted out. No, of course he had seen stupid thugs, but he had never seen such stupid ones, he said, referring to the system's developers. But Shuken took it all personally, so I had to calm him down. For the remaining 2 hours, he stared impatiently at his phone, counting down the minutes. The last few seconds dragged on like tar. It couldn't be, he thought, that he had simply been deceived. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. Hyun-woo waited tensely. He didn't know what awaited him, monsters, trials, but he was ready for anything. But then the light went out, as if everything around him had disappeared, and he felt a slight sense of disorientation. When the light came on again, he found himself in a completely unfamiliar place. It was good that there was a chair under his buttocks, otherwise he would have fallen to the floor. The place resembled a deep stone well. The light fell from above, with no visible source. He was moved unnoticed without any portals. Hyun-woo looked around. In front of him sat a girl at the table. He had seen a similar scene somewhere before. The white-haired Chobit girl greeted him politely. She stood up straight and moved little, and her skin looked unnaturally pale. Nice to meet you, guard, she said. I am an architect, or rather an assistant. A girl named Av quickly recovered. Ah, Hyun-woo asked, amazed at how a name could consist of 2 letters like a model of a toaster. These meetings would be frequent from now on, the white-haired answering machine informed him. The mad hermit was inspired. He could finally find out everything about the tower and his imprisonment. 5 minutes of silence passed. Hyun-woo decided to check if she would really remain motionless. He even held his breath. Another 5 minutes of silence. She's definitely not breathing. A damn bucketoid, instead of a living being. Unable to bear it, he began asking questions first, whether he was human or not. He could definitely be made to talk, he thought. The white-haired girl didn't even intend to explain anything. She blinked her gray eyelashes. This made Hyun-woo furious. He jumped up from his chair and started shouting and demanding answers. She could answer the question if asked directly. Apparently, this model of ChatGPT did not support a high level of abstraction. A stupid bucketoid with the appearance of a cute girl confirmed his guess. He asked her who had locked him in the training tower. A simple, direct question that even a stupid bucketoid could handle. A lengthy data processing followed. It looks like they shoved a Pentium 3 processor into the girl. Information denied due to low rank, the answering machine said after a long pause. How stupid, Hyun-woo thought, but decided to try again. He found out that only by raising his rank could he gain greater access and more information. At least the machine said this clearly. However, it really pissed him off that the system, like this doll answering machine, was all done by clumsy developers, and there were no answers anywhere. He tried again to ask a leading question. If you increase your rank, can you find out who created the tower? But it didn't work out. The machine couldn't comment on the hidden data about the system in any way. It's not even clear what he would learn by increasing his rank. This was frankly starting to get annoying. No user focus. The entire development budget went to a pretty face. A request for the training tower also yielded no results. Access denied. A request for the reason for its creation was also dismissed with a bucket of bolts for brains. The request for the reasons for the appearance of monsters was also rejected. There is information here, but they don't give it. They only show it. Beautiful, Hyun-woo thought. He remembered how his father used to fix the TV in his distant childhood. If he hit it, it would immediately start receiving a signal properly. This machine had one excellent property. It felt pain, and you could vent all your anger on it. A stupid android with the appearance of a cute girl rubbed his bruised head. Hyun-woo got really worked up and was thinking about opening up this system unit because there was something interesting inside. The bucket girl was indignant. She couldn't answer his questions. Dad's method works, thought Hyun-woo. However, the developers were still just wasting his precious time, and he was terribly angry. Anticipating the imminent unpacking, the android reported that there was still some information available. Guardian, the bucketoid said, shaking his fist as if the answer was so obvious that it needed no explanation. The guard must protect. The robot issued another poorly written script. It seems one blow is not enough to enlighten the microcircuits. The bucket was stuck in overload mode again. It seemed like that was how she compensated for her lack of computing power. She finally got around to giving the main quest so I wouldn't have to waste so much time on empty dialogue branches. However, the bucketoid wasn't going to say anything that Hyun-woo needed. At the moment, Hyun-woo is only a temporary guardian, whatever that means. To become an official guardian, you need to follow the link. Then began an unskippable advertisement for an unknown Hyun-woo brand of electrical equipment. When it was over, he was finally able to ask how to get a new rank. 5 days later, she said in an ominous voice from the movie, a glacial crevasse will open in the city. At the deepest point of the crevice, there will be a beak that will help him increase his rank. This city needs a new hero. Hyun-woo watched the lights of the crime city flicker. Hyun-woo moved away from the dialogue with the Chobit. He was still irritated by her phrases and stupid electronic voice. However, there was something important. He had to improve his skills for the first time. In a very long time, he could become even stronger. There was nothing else to do but accept this task, especially since it involved many third parties. In the morning, friends' gatherings in a cafe for breakfast were interrupted by the exclamation of little So-yeon, a glacial crack, she screamed. They came to eat meat and burgers as befits real hunters. When Hyun-woo decided to ask his friends what they knew about the ice crack, the friends looked at each other with alarm and were in no hurry to answer. Shin-ken decided to first find out what was behind this question, and he also looked worried. Hyun-woo was surprised by his friend's sharp reaction. It seemed like it was not an easy matter. Shin-ken began to explain to him with a serious look. The phenomenon was familiar to him. It's a real disaster, he said, a catastrophe of enormous proportions. At the main headquarters of the Ares Guild, in the boss's office, they were heating up a soldering iron to further motivate his subordinates. Boss Hook Seong-woo had just destroyed the office furniture and was now thinking about who and how to use the electrical appliance. The news that followed upset him greatly, and he thought about what to do about it. His subordinate sent the guild's best killer to eliminate the annoying obstacle, but ended up being killed by his target. He really wanted to send half the department to the torture chamber to maintain discipline and morale, but that wouldn't help matters, Song-woo thought. Woo-jung bowed his head guiltily and prayed that he would get away with it. Last time he had experienced a red-hot poker and did not want to repeat. The boss's attention turned to Yoo Byung-wook, and Woo-jung breathed a sigh of relief. "Start killing the goats," Boss Song said angrily, showing more and more of his cruel nature. He took the case under personal control and was even ready to allocate his money for new killers, stronger than Sean Gunn. "And let the music play in his house, but he will not hear it," he ordered his people. He asked again specifically to know if he had been understood correctly. Yuben nodded in response, immediately making it clear that he had accepted the order. The boss sat down on a chair, letting off steam. He felt better, because some teenagers were causing a ruckus, killing the best people, some kind of mess. But there was something completely different on the agenda. The Pedo Guild also required urgent attention. Intelligence reported that they were gathering a real army and preparing for open war with the Ares Guild. Hunter wars are common. Yuben nodded again. The task was clear: to use everyone for consumption and fertilizer. Nothing can be left to these blockheads. Chief Song-woo grabbed his head. "There are so many things to do. I would love to go to the bathhouse and have a drink. But business is business. He doesn't take care of himself at all. He's always busy with work. And he has to think about himself too." A cheerful quartet of the first hunters sat in the restaurant and waited for their food. Hyun-woo was as happy as a child, looking at something bright in front of him. The ring in Kwon-sun's hands glowed to the full value of 2 billion. "Such expensive things are given in the labyrinth." Kwon-sun gently hinted to his friend that it was time for him to stop being a parasite and find a job. Hyun-woo learned from his friends the difference between a labyrinth and a dungeon, and it turned out that they contained different artifacts. "This ring is also an artifact," explained the beauty So-yeon. "Dungeons also provide special resources, such as magic stones or monster parts," Shin-ken added. "In the labyrinths, they give ready-made artifacts from the treasury, like this ring." "The ring has an enchantment," Kwon-seong said, hoping to pique Hyun-woo's interest. "Just like in the games," the hermit noticed, looking at the shiny trinket. Artifacts with enchantments, much better than ordinary ones. Hyun-woo gradually understood what was what. The smell of money attracted him like a hare to a fox. As soon as he looked closely at the ring, he began to see inscriptions in an ancient language, and a status window appeared. Now Hyun-woo could use his ability to recognize objects through the system. He used the right to information skill again, concentrating on the ring. Damn secret materials, Hyun-woo thought. The system hid the description. However, he accepted Kwon-so's tip that after all the work, he definitely needed to visit the labyrinth. He returned the ring to its owner and again asked about its value to make sure he had not misheard. Having put all his affairs aside, the hermit decided that it was time to eat. And that is why he goes to meet friends, because they feed him well. He simply swiped his finger across the menu and ordered each dish like a true caveman. Friends were very surprised by Hyun-woo's bottomless stomach and his complete lack of conscience. "Eat without hesitation," said Kwon-so, holding back tears with difficulty, "because today it is his turn to pay the company's bills." Hyun-woo exclaimed, as if he had forgotten a small detail and only now remembered it. "What do you know about the glacial crevasse?" He suddenly stunned his friends with his question. The question caught them off guard and made them fall silent. They became very tense. There was a long silence as they thought about what their eccentric savage hermit had gotten himself into again. Meanwhile, food was brought, rare steak, pizza, and other snacks. But Hyun-woo did not back down and continued to ask about the crack. It turned out that this is what they call a crack in the ground that suddenly appears and monsters that have no end in sight crawl out of it. "Germany and China, where it originated, are called the gates of hell," said little So-yeon. Hyun-woo thought as he greedily devoured the meat. He missed normal food terribly while he lived in the tower. The stupid android didn't say a word about the fact that this event was a real disaster. But what will happen if this thing appears in their native Korea? He scared the guys with his question. They couldn't find anything to say in response. Terrible images of possible consequences were floating before their eyes. Even the always combative Kwon So became thoughtful and despondent. He really didn't like these thoughts. The rational Shuken calculated that even with a C-rank crack, even if it was stopped in time, everything would be destroyed. Hunters lack cohesion. Even if the guilds unite, Ares may refuse help, providing it only formally. "What bastards?" Hyun-woo responded, taking out his anger on a piece of meat on his plate. He poked the unfortunate piece again and again, deep in thought. They should rest and gain strength in the remaining 4 days, Hyun-woo informed them. However, he did not go into details, since what he would say would sound too strange anyway, and it was unlikely that his friends would understand it. The roar of the turbines drowned out everything around for many kilometers. The airport was in full swing with its usual work. However, something unusual had already begun to happen, and at first people did not understand at all what they were feeling. But then they felt a tremor, as if someone was beating a drum and sending waves across the ground. The tremors became stronger and stronger until a real earthquake began, throwing everyone into panic. A long crack ran across the runway, as if the ground had dried out after a long heat wave. Soon it broke apart, beginning a tectonic birth, and everything around shook terribly. Hundreds of screams were heard, and panic gripped the airport as the crack became a veritable abyss. In the darkness of the underground temple there lived a single monk. The empty gallery was illuminated by the light of deathly dim lamps. A lone figure entered the atrium with a large round table, where another person was waiting. "The 9th level has come to its senses," the novice reported, bowing. The man at the table asked if someone the two knew about was fully awake. "Soon he will be completely ready," reported the monk in a dark cassock. The man at the table was pleased with this news. He looked like a formidable warrior and had a dark aura surrounding him. His thoughts were occupied by the wild, eccentric hermit, a very unusual person. How strong is he? The warrior wondered, wanting to test this man as soon as possible. Seoul Airport continued to collapse under powerful tremors. The disaster only gained momentum. People fell backwards and could not move from fear. They screamed loudly and begged for salvation. Soon, other people began to arrive at the scene, and the first to arrive was a helicopter carrying reporters, which began to notify everyone about the disaster. The government announced an emergency evacuation within a 5-kilometer radius of the airport, with hundreds of thousands of people to be rescued. The airport was closed, and the first small group of hunters and those who could be quickly gathered were sent there. A terrifying picture opens up from above. The entire area around the crack was teeming with monsters. They were crawling like locusts. Smoke and the glow of fires covered the entire area, and real chaos reigned everywhere. A small group of hunters fought in loose formation in the open area of the parking lot. They could hardly hold on. Horror struck them to the very heart. It was unlikely that these people could resist for long. Humanoid monsters with weapons in their hands and paws attacked small and weak people. There were too few of them to hold back the onslaught of many monsters, each of which was quite dangerous. The men were thrown into the breach without proper training. They had lost all their fighting spirit and were shaking with fear, not knowing what to do. But among the ordinary hunters, there was one who did not lose his composure and took command. This guy reacted well to danger and rushed to help his comrade who was hesitant. Magical fetters bound the ugly monsters and protected the confused fighter. The warrior finished off the monster bound by a magical tentacle with a blow of his blade, demonstrating excellent preparation and coordination of actions. After the attack, he immediately retreated to avoid accidental hits on himself. This man knew his business. A soldier from his group began to thank the elder, but he cut him off abruptly. The battlefield was no place for idle chatter. Their situation was still difficult. They were like rats driven into a corner. The squad leader's furious attacks could not defeat them. He was only stalling for time until the inevitable end came. There were too many enemies, and the cavalry was in no hurry to help. At this rate, they would definitely be finished off before it arrived. But he did not even think of giving up. If he showed weakness, his people would completely lose heart and die that very hour. The hunter fought back bravely with all his might, striking his enemies with blows from his broadsword. But in place of the killed monsters, new bloodthirsty monsters appeared, full of strength. They are all running non-stop to the airport where there are many civilians who will not be able to defend themselves. The Dark Army kept coming like a tide, wave after wave, completely inexorably. They filled everything around with bodies. From the left, strange sounds were heard, as if a hurricane was howling. The leader of the hunting party turned around, and even he flinched when he saw this. A giant walked towards them with heavy steps, the earth shaking from his steps. A huge skeleton with a club at the ready emerged from the crevice. An enemy that was too tough even for experienced hunters, let alone their tiny squad. The A-rank monster looked like a death sentence, and the hunters who had gathered their courage once again despaired. They had neither the equipment nor the skills to do anything to this demon. The experienced squad leader froze for a moment. He was not taught to think for long. He had gone through more than one training course. He had long been turned into a killing machine. But now his trained instincts were not working, and could not give him any effective plan of action. "Run, you fools!" he shouted when he came to, a surge of adrenaline bringing him to his senses. Another hunter, shield at the ready, rushed to stop the monster's attack and protect their squad. A heavy club the size of a tree flew towards a small shield that could hardly protect its owner. The fighter activated the skill and a red glow flashed, giving his comrades time to regroup. The skeleton hit a home run and the hunter flew away like a rag doll. The leader screamed as he saw his fighter just get seriously hurt. The soft body of the car crumpled and partially softened the impact. The guy was lucky enough to miraculously stay alive, even though he was seriously wounded. But the giant did not stop and continued to move forward. He did not want to let the victim go so easily. A monster without an ounce of soft tissue swung to deliver a fatal strike to a wounded fighter. Skelwrist firmly clutched a club with a metal handle. At such a size, it didn't matter how high quality the weapon the enemy used. The commander rushed with all his might to help. His fighter was unconscious and could not move, and the leader did not have time. He could only scream. He ordered him to get up and survive, but in vain. The giant was already lowering his bat to smash the man's head. But this is not what the squad leader thought. He should not see his people die. He should have died first. Suddenly, a light kick from a man in flip-flops and a tracksuit rolled into the battle and instantly eliminated the threat with one slap. The skeleton turned into a pile of bones when it was swatted like a fly. The commander was taken aback. For the first time in his life, he had seen such a sight. The cavalry arrived in time, and the strange man saved them. The flip-flops sparked as the hero landed, the mighty slippers back in action. The fighters recognized their savior. His distinctive black suit and slippers were widely known among hunters and others. The shaggy, wild hermit hero arrived in a dazzling blaze of his own glory. The hunters looked at him as a savior. There can be no doubt about that. Experienced player. Kim Hyun-woo practiced his heroic appearance and posed in various impressive poses. The day almost turned into night from the lips of smoke. The fire spread quickly, threatening to burn everything to the ground. Hyun-woo stopped near the remains of the defeated enemy, which were slowly melting away, emitting miasma, when the system notification popped up again and the status flashed. He also had to go to the airport. After that, time was running out. Hyun-woo glanced at the hunters nearby. They looked battered, but they did not stop admiring him. After the mortal danger, they suddenly relaxed the bakery. Are they completely crazy or something? Thought Hyun-woo. They're not filming a movie here. The fight is still going on. He asked them if they remembered where they were, just like little children. After all, right now, monsters were attacking them from behind because the hunters had completely forgotten about them. Hyun-woo surveyed the battlefield. He wasn't very coherent in combat, but he was still dragging the roller solo as usual. But there really were too many monsters, and leaving them in the rear was dangerous. There was real chaos on the battlefield. Blood, guts, tears, the cries of the wounded, the best cure for wrinkles. Hyun-woo decided to help a little so that the hunters could hold out until the main forces arrived. The damn big club came in handy, and Hyun-woo armed himself with it. The hunters were distracted again. Watching his actions, he did not understand what the hermit was going to do. However, they could not help but admire his strength and power. He single-handedly held the log that the giant skeleton was wielding. The rocket man launched without any reverse calculation and soared into the sky. Even the seasoned battle veteran, the commander, had never seen such savagery in battle. Hyun-woo swung the telegraph pole in his hands with all his might, and he turned on the death carousel mode. It was spinning around its axis very quickly. Then he made an excellent throw, like in Gorodki, and the giant log flew towards the enemy. They scattered like bowling pins, their crowding playing into the hands of Hyun-woo and his Jedi trick. The enemies scattered in a cowardly manner, tails between their legs, or something similar. The hellish lawnmower stunk up everything around, even uprooting concrete slabs. Even the hunters were horrified by this terrible frenzy. Hyun-woo shook his hands. He had completed this part of the task, and it was time to move on. The squad leader couldn't believe his eyes. The hero had saved them again. The rumors about the experienced player were true. They allowed themselves a moment of emotion. Now, in their desperate situation, there was a ray of hope, and they could survive. "Excellent," he commanded. Everyone gather around the experienced player. His fighting spirit had returned. This battle could still be won. He thought and noticed how the player was pressing on his heels, as if nothing had happened, leaving the battlefield. "He'll be back," Hyun-woo shouted to them. "They can handle it, because they have the power of friendship." He quickly rushed away towards the airport, only his flip-flops flashing. The commander was again stunned. How could this happen? And what was going on? Unanswered questions swarmed. His sword flashed and took the bloody harvest. The path of the samurai is simple. Strike and learn, and think about nothing else. Everything fine, they just have to deal with the rest. Easy. You can't show your tears to your subordinates. The commander rushed into battle. Damn experienced player, if he had stayed a little longer, that's how it is. After this, the heroes will be played with and abandoned. The battle raged with renewed fury. Aviation fuel blazed all around, and people and monsters fought to the death. His men were on their last legs, their stamina exhausted. There is a limit to everything. Even if they have survived until now, they will fall from fatigue, completely exhausted. And the leader understood this. Once again, they were on the brink of despair, survived thanks to unexpected help, and again lost it. There was no more hope. He took a deep breath. If there is one thing that helps a person to hold on in difficult times, it is his fighting spirit. Never give up, be a man, went the ancient proverb authored by Statham. Balls in a fist, some have them, some don't. Just hold on with all your might. Help is already on the way. The commander threw out the squad's inspiration. But death was already breathing down his neck. He could already see wheat fields to the horizon. The ears of grain caressed his hands. A samurai's hand on the hilt of a katana. A fleeting movement of a plum petal, one enemy defeated. Maximum speed, said the warrior, and began the game of death. With one stroke of the blade, the huge orc was split in half. The commander was saved. The cavalry came for the second time in his life, and in the same battle, the hunter wondered how much longer this would continue. This emotional roller coaster would drive anyone crazy. After this fight, he will definitely retire. The sword returned to its sheath. We must love everyone. Even the enemy must be killed tenderly. Samurai Warrior Star Guild leader and simply handsome Shinken arrived on time. And with him, his entire honest army, they lined up beautifully and effectively so that everyone could be seen. The exhausted hunters rejoiced. Now there was nothing to fear. The sky was cut by flashes of lightning. It seemed someone had summoned a scorpion. The electrical discharges launched a cascade of lightning and destroyed all the monsters in the area. One day the Sith will rule the galaxy. Know the power of the dark side of the Force. The charred, crispy corpse fell at Shinken's feet, and the smell of fried meat filled the air. And this is called time, asked his living Tesla coil, gracefully walking across the field of everyday life in high boots. Come on, guys, said the beautiful So-yeon, her long, disheveled hair falling down like a waterfall. Her guild had arrived in full force. She spent the entire evening before the attack on her makeup, and it was a success. The sight of the beauty made the male half of the hunters drool. It can't be. 2 cavalry regiments arrived at once to help. You can only see something like that in Manhwa, thought the squad leader. Eagles have arrived, shouted one of the fighters, pointing to the side. A squad of armored tanks from Quan Sun's guild also arrived on the battlefield. 3 cavalry regiments. The commander did not believe his eyes. He did not understand which god saved him, but he promised to pray to him. Now that he's definitely retired, he'll start a vegetable garden and plant potatoes, and not all this other stuff. The alert little. So-yeon looked around for Hyun-woo, who was nowhere to be seen. And this experienced player surrendered to them, the commander thought. Who in their right mind would worry about him? He went deep into the rift. The commander told the beautiful So-yeon. The bosses are never late or delayed. They come exactly when needed, Shinken said. The heavy infantry shield crashed into the concrete surface, sending up a shower of sparks. Quan Sun, as befits a tank, stood at the head of the united army of hunters. He pressed his shield into the ground, used the acceleration ability, and turned into a transformer. His heavy shield was enveloped in a force field aura, and the bulldozer man pushed forward. Heavy armor and shield along with acceleration became a good combination with a huge energy output. Forming a wedge, the hunters of the 3 guilds launched an organized attack on the crowd of monsters. The shield simply crushed the monsters with a battering ram. They could not withstand Quan So's mad onslaught. He walked through the disorderly ranks of the enemy like a knife through butter, smashing everyone in his path like Keldy. Some particularly agile monsters tried to outflank their group, relying heavily on speed and attacks to the back and flanks. But they all met instant death. The calm and measured Shinken cut them down in an instant, and he didn't even bat an eyelid. Such small fry didn't bother him. The enemy's defeat became obvious. His fiery blade cut through flesh and bone without losing speed, just like cutting through air. Casting a spell in white gloves, the blue-haired witch gathered a clot of magic in her palm, and lightning flashed. Static electricity lifted her luxurious hair as she cast multiple lightning spells. The Mistress of Storms completed the rout of the enemy by unleashing weapons of mass destruction on them. The discharges killed so many monsters that their bodies covered the entire parking lot where the battle was raging like a carpet. Another fighter gave his life in the war. What brought him here no longer mattered. War is the path of killing. With the corpse of his defeated enemy crushed under the slippers of fate, Hyun-woo surveyed the battlefield. It seems that the forces that arrived should deal with the disaster while he takes on the main task. An otherworldly portal filled with dark energy opened up before him. He was thinking about how to get down, and how good it was that the monsters disappeared after they died. Otherwise, who would bury them all? Along the sheer wall of the rift, a serpentine road climbed, as if carved directly into the stone, and new troops of their unknown enemy kept arriving along it. Hyun-woo thought about it. He needed to get inside as quickly as possible, and not waste a lot of time on small fry. If you go left, you will lose your horse. Hyun-woo saw a strange inscription on the rock. If you go to the right, you'll find 100 grams. Another strange sign? The signs here are so-so, thought Hyun-woo. But he didn't read the next inscription because he saw something more interesting, and GPS navigation would be more reliable. Right over the abyss hung a tired car. It despaired of finding its happiness, and sadly looked into the abyss. To be or not to be, that was the question. He just needs some fresh air. Car psychotherapist Hyun-woo opened the right door. The left door suffered the same fate, and now he held a car door in each hand. Car psychotherapy services, fast and cheap, ask crazy wild hermit Hyun-woo. The slippers of fate have begun to take off. The main thing is to start waving your arms vigorously. Geronimo, spreading his arms like wings, Hyun-woo jumped off the cliff. He hadn't known how to be like everyone else since childhood. Apparently this is my lot in life, he sang. Time to play Mr. Proper and clean up the place, Hyun-woo laughed. Directly below him, the monsters were climbing a narrow, slippery path in the rocks, pressed tightly together. It looks like rain is coming, said a distant relative of Piglet. Hyun-woo landed on the path, a burst of plasma scattering everyone unfortunate enough to be underneath him. The monsters hesitated. They could no longer see in the cloud of dust. Others supported them from below, and an unknown enemy appeared from above. The winged shadow of a demon emerged through the clouds of smoke as the dust settled a little. Bazooka hands! Hyun-woo shouted and rushed down the sloping path in a mad rush. The monsters wavered. In the terms of their contract, there was no mention of devouring, gutting, destruction. But there was not a word about fighting madness. Hyun-woo watched the result. He slid all the way to the bottom, scattering the monsters like a bunch of dry leaves with a broom, all of them resting peacefully on the bottom. The air at the bottom of the crevice was stale. The miasma made it difficult to breathe, and it smelled like a menagerie. The search in the semi-darkness did not last long. Hyun-woo found the desired target. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the boss of the gym appeared and approached him with measured steps. "Punk not grandfather," barked a humanoid monster who was dropped into a jar of Gainer as a child. Tourist Crimson Horse, Ascendant has gained the status of a monster hero with a glowing mohawk on his head. On the side of the hiking enthusiast hung the sought-after key, somewhere between the bricks of his press. Eureka, Hyun-woo realized. There was going to be meat now, but even he was embarrassed by the steroid overgrowth. It's good that the key wasn't hidden more securely, otherwise he would have spent a long time looking for it. Hyun-woo rushed forward at the angry punk. Saikentsuki flew into the monster's mug. "Good evening," the polite hunter greeted. But the steroid-fueled tourist with the face of a boiled bat easily dodged the blow. What a twist. This must be a real glitch in the Matrix, Hyun-woo thought. The kick also had no effect. The monster was even able to counterattack by swinging its hoof. The heavy blow sent Hyun-woo skidding on his butt all the way to the wall of the gorge. For the first time in a long time, he received a clean blow in response. No matter how many years had passed, Hyun-woo's heart began to beat faster. Danger, vulnerability, goosebumps. As if he were alive again, and the joy had returned to battle. The walking testosterone didn't play at being noble, and decided to finish off the lying man with a blow from above. The heavy blow almost smashed the hermit's skull, and the sand, knocked out of the rocks by the abrasive, streaked across his face and got into his mouth. The boss of the gym frowned rather glumly and continued to strike until the enemy came to his senses. Hyun-woo performed a birch tree and sent the tourist flying with a light kick, and then he gave him more with his fist on his boiled face. The Red Chief drilled into the rock like a true geologist. But such an attack did not harm him. On the contrary, he seemed to become even more inflamed and immediately rose up. "A man in a tracksuit and flip-flops, who is he without them?" croaked the hiking enthusiast. "Hermit, auto mechanic, dentist?" Hyun-woo thought. He understood the devil without words. Why use words when you can speak with the force of your fists, especially when you have such a good interlocutor for heated discussions? Hyun-woo caught up with his opponent on the ground. They don't hit those lying down, they finish them off. He remembered the ancient rule of fistfighting. Paper beats rock. I knew I had to throw away the scissors. Hyun-woo was upset. And then he immediately used the second stone. This is not in the rules of the Konobu, but who reads these rules? But the punk lover had also watched Bruce Lee movies, so he was able to block the hermit's blow. Hyun-woo didn't expect such a turn of events. When all the monsters fall with one blow, you begin to forget what real contact is. The blast wave passed through him, almost rupturing his eardrums, and the demon's fist threw him back again. Followed by a finishing kick from the front, the punk tourist did not miss karate lessons. This blow went through in full force and Hyun-woo absorbed all the damage. He crashed into the wall with his back, exploding the stones. The hermit coughed heavily. His ribs ached from the blow, the sand crunched on his teeth. The evening ceased to be languid. They changed the third position, but he is the only one who gets it. Something is wrong, the hunter thought. The steroid-fueled cranium creature turned out to be much stronger than he thought. His ribs cracked as he tried to get up. Now the real fight would begin. The monster was very different from those he had encountered in the tower. Even the level 100 boss flew away like a furry animal. The limitations of the tower were taking their toll. Hyun-woo inhaled. In order to become stronger, he subjected himself to various austerities. It was time to remove one of the restrictions. He did not like to break the vows of abstinence he had made to himself. It undermined his spirit, but the situation forced him to do so. "Hey, rubber face." The hero rose to his feet, gathering his strength. The monster wheezed something unintelligible in response. After all, he didn't have a command of real speech, like all monsters. Hyun-woo pointed at the monster and promised him a quick and easy death. But the punk fan didn't understand a damn thing. He put all his points into strength, but not enough into intelligence. The mad hermit took a special stance. The first technique is a lethal slap. He made the same seemingly insignificant movements with his hands. Taking a low stance, he invited the monster on a date with death. This technique brought back old memories from his time in captivity, so he didn't want to use it again. Many years ago, imprisoned in the training tower, he knew despair when he tried everything he could to free himself. Hyun-woo had not yet become a crazy hermit and was following the script of a martial arts novel he had read before. The hero of this novel, like him, was imprisoned, but was able to escape by learning the truth and creating his own martial arts. The prisoner, completely exhausted, lay on the cold ground of the tower, and only at the bottom of the well of despair did the right thought strike him. Having cast off his mortal fatigue, he became cheerful again. The hunter refused to give up and accept his fate, away with despondency and defeatism. He would definitely be able to get out of this prison. Madness was gradually enveloping his mind. Hyun-woo tried everything possible and persistently created his own martial art. He remembered everything he knew about martial arts from movies and novels. 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 100 crunches, he did everything. But what does it matter if a person is determined to achieve his goal? The main thing is to believe that once he becomes a master, he will be able to do whatever he wants. He ran around the tower like crazy, shouting pompous phrases and striking theatrical poses that he could only imagine. Even then, the tower's inhabitants began to suspect something about their involuntary guest. Unfortunately for Hyun-woo, his techniques didn't work, and the cheats refused to connect. He continued to study the sky, flying away again and again from the blows of different bosses. It was all about boredom and the endless time at his disposal. Hyun-woo didn't give up and kept trying, still delivering ridiculous blows and shouting strange phrases into which he put his whole soul. Until one day it worked and the monster was torn to shreds. A special feeling was absorbed into every cell of his body as the monster's head exploded like a balloon. This feeling turned into special skills because he used them thousands of times while clearing the tower. From comic movements, these techniques turned into a real martial art and acquired unprecedented power. And yet the source of the power of these blows is his madness, each blow one step closer to the abyss into darkness. Hyun-woo removed the final seal and prepared for the final round with the boss. He waited for him to rush at him. He clearly saw his every movement. The demon attacked with an overhead hook, his left hand held ready for the finishing blow. A heavy fist with growths on the knuckles was heading straight for the hunter's head. The games were over. Both fought to the death using their best skills. Hyun-woo patiently waiting for the right moment to attack. He deftly entered the redhead's defense, his palm aiming at the demon's eyes, distracting him. Hyun-woo then turned his palm into a fist and slammed it into the ugly demon's face. The fist was echoed by a pathetic phrase worthy of the king of pathos. The technique didn't reach the level of finger gripping of the whiskers, but the explosion was deafening. Secondary fragments flew, and the shockwave crumbled the walls of the gorge. The energy of the impact was reflected from the walls and filled the entire bottom of the gorge, scattering in both directions. The mad hermit stood in the middle of the gorge in clouds of smoke, bending over the fallen enemy. Hyun-woo sighed as he looked at the devastating consequences of his actions. Because this technique required the utterance of strange words and drew on the energy of the absurd, he always felt awkward when using it. Everyone has their own cemetery in the closet, but it's better when no one knows about it. He picked up the key from the monster's body. It was good that it hadn't been lost in the heat of battle. Finding it in the dark would have been difficult. As soon as he took the key, the system recognized the quest item and sent a notification. This promised answers to long-standing questions. The system sent him a new invitation in 3 days. As soon as the noise of the battle died down, Hyun-woo noticed a strange buzzing sound above him and a wandering red light. Something was approaching from above the gorge, buzzing like a huge fly. A drone copter descended to the bottom of the gorge. Apparently it was filming. The drone carefully focused its digital eye on Hyun-woo's face. The mad hermit had been in captivity for so long that he had no idea what the purpose of the thing above him was. The Ares Guild drone kept direct observation of the mad hermit and broadcast everything to the guild office. The mood of the staff was depressed. The man on the screen was a very formidable enemy and did not promise anything good. They waited in fear for the reaction of their young, hot-tempered, and quick-to-reprise boss. "Is this A rank?" he asked his staff after finishing the screening. The HR manager hastened to justify herself, since she had previously delivered not a simple analysis, but a document from the association. On their table lay the result of the official test of his skills, all A-rank abilities, except magic, for which he received an A rank. The director couldn't stand it and slammed his fist on the table where his people were looking. Even after watching the video, this chicken didn't understand anything. Does she really think that these skills are just A rank? The manager looked down in fear. She couldn't find anything to say in response, but this was a remark. Without magic, without items in a regular tracksuit, even director Song-woo couldn't understand how this was possible. He returned to contemplating the case materials again. He needed to think everything through with a cool head. An incredible force that was fundamentally changing the entire landscape of their strategy, and something had to be done about it. Having made his decision, as befits a true boss, Hook Seong-woo turned to his deputy Yoo Byung-wook. He asked if the materials for the new case were ready. You can always turn defeat into victory if you are smart. Yoo Byung-wook confirmed his readiness. He had already let his boss down once, and it was not worth letting him down a second time. A weak smile touched the director's face. There are always things that can't be fixed with force alone. Inspired, he ordered his subordinates to carry out the plan. The day after the ice-free glacier crevasse closed, a meeting was held at the Korean Hunters Association. There were dozens of reporters present, even from abroad. The leaders of the 3 guilds and Hyun-woo were invited to receive awards in recognition of their efforts in closing the fissure. Hyun-woo once again showed his complete disdain for formal dress codes, preferring loose clothing. Park Ga-moon's hands were shaking with excitement, and the phone almost fell out of his hands. He was overjoyed because he could broadcast from the front row as Hyun-woo's friend. Thousands of people watched his broadcast and wrote animatedly in the chat. The minister handed the award to the hero with a sour face. He had never gotten used to the changes in the world when self-confident children began to play leading roles in society. He looked the guy over from top to bottom. He looked sloppy. His uniform was not in regulation, and because of his age, it was too late to be called up for the army. But in his youth, he would have definitely brought such an impudent upstart to his senses and shaved his head, the minister's gaze said. The sight of the mad hermit evoked nothing but contempt. And this man was a hero, a complete disgrace to society. The minister was angry. Perhaps it would be worth buying some clothes for Kim Hyun-woo, the minister noted, his lips pressed tightly together. Hyun-woo snapped out of his thoughts and looked at the Minister of Defense right in front of him. Usually he just ignores people, having lost all social skills in the tower, but he chose to answer this time. He rudely brushed off the minister, which angered him even more, saying that he could ignore him. The chat on the broadcast exploded with comments. Everyone liked the rebellious antics of the crazy hermit. The man in uniform almost collapsed from a heart attack. In the army, he would have definitely sent the greenhorn to the guardhouse, but here he was forced to endure. The crazy hermit simply took the commemorative award, flowers from the minister's hands, without waiting for any special congratulations. And at that very moment he was gone, running away from the outbursts and boring objections of the Minister of Defense. A high-ranking man who had devoted his entire life to his career and service was shaking with anger. He became truly furious and demanded that the hunter be sent to the army. where he would immediately be taught to love the army. Hyun-woo's friends could only sigh. His selfish nature and low social skills made communicating with him a difficult thing. The tall Chinese pagoda was drowning in the rays of the sunset, where the headquarters of the Pedo Guild was located. The girl was taking a royally huge bath and looking at the screen. Thick clouds of steam were rising from the hot water, like in a bathhouse. Her thin robe revealed her bare back with a skull tattoo on it. Beautiful thin lips sighed excitedly, and a tear ran down her cheek. The girl watched the fight between the mad hermit and the red-skinned demon and could not believe her eyes. The special pose, the low stance in which Hyun-woo stood, seemed familiar to her. She froze, afraid to miss even one frame. Her red eyes did not blink. The pose, the disheveled hair, the outline of the body, it all evoked very familiar feelings. The girl jumped up suddenly as if she had been stung. She was beside herself with excitement. The pretty cutie's face blushed. No longer from the hot water, she wanted to know his name. The bathhouse girl who was serving her reported that it was Kim Hyun-woo, a hunter who had recently left the tower. Kim Hyun-woo, she whispered his name, spelling it out on her tongue, her beautiful eyes sparkling like bright rubies. She immediately demanded all the information about the strange prana in the tracksuit. The minion nodded and hastened to clarify what exactly interested her mistress so much. The long-haired beauty with the appearance of a princess wanted to know absolutely everything. The maid nodded again solemnly. The will of the mistress was law for her. Another servant in white robes entered the bathhouse and approached his mistress. The warrior knelt down and bowed. He reported the capture of the neighboring guild. The princess did not look up from the screen. She did not even deign to glance at her servant. His report was insignificant. The warrior reported on the capture of all the southern dungeons, telling everything in detail. The lady emerged from the water, her thin robe clinging to her naked body. But she was not worried. The servant would hardly dare to raise his eyes. Their troops clashed with the Ares Guild and lost one warrior as a prisoner, the servant continued. She stood on the warm tiles of the bathhouse, water dripping down her body. The maid threw clothes of imperial colors on her. The girl did not care at all about the fate of the prisoner. If he let himself be captured, then he was pathetic, she said, her beautiful face giving off a chill. The weak have no place in the guild, the petite girl said imperiously, walking barefoot on the tiles of the bathhouse. With her thin, graceful fingers, she took hold of her luxurious long hair. With one easy movement, she squeezed them dry, each movement filled with power. A proud beauty, she made an indelible impression, like a real empress. She ordered to not delay in capturing all the remaining guilds. Behind her sweet, childish face hid a powerful and cruel nature. The spirit of Emperor Qin was reborn in this fragile beauty. She demanded to capture all the dungeons without a trace. All for the sake of an oath given a long time ago, she thought, looking at the eccentric hunter. Only when she looked at him did her eyes shine with interest, and her face was scorched with a slight blush. She moved closer to the screen to get a good look at Kim Hyun-woo's face, her heart beating faster than usual. The beautiful So-yeon dressed up in a low-cut evening dress for dinner, and once again scolded Hyun-woo for his indiscretion. She reminded him again that he was too popular, which meant he needed to be more careful. Kwon-so laughed and confirmed her words, but Shin Kyung, cautious as always, said that it was not funny. Kim Hyun-woo wondered where such popularity could come from. As a true hermit, he was very far from it. Friends began to show him various news about the mad hermit. The topic of the experienced player has grown incredibly, and only the lazy have not written about it. The journalists hadn't changed at all, Hyun-woo noted, and they were doing the same thing back then as now. Little. So Yeon insisted that Hyun-woo pay more attention to this matter and not run away in the middle of the ceremonies. They watch every step, including appearance, Shin-ken noted reservedly. Kwon-seong just laughed. He understood the futility of his friends trying to curb Hyun-woo's eccentric nature. Hyun-woo brushed it all off easily. "Why worry about people you'll never meet?" he replied frivolously. His life and his rules, Shim Kyung and So-yeon, finally surrendered. No matter what you say, a fool doesn't care about anything. The mad hermit glanced at his watch and told them that he was leaving them. Cautious Shim-ken hastened to clarify where exactly their crazy friend was heading. But he, as always, evasively reported that he had a meeting and turned around to leave. Meeting, whispered little So-yi to herself, completely discouraged. Where is Hyun-woo, and where are the meetings? All three shuddered at such news. Could a mad hermit really have friends besides them? They were surprised. The girl sighed. She was already tired of worrying about her friend as if he were a small child. But why worry when your friend is Superman? Kwon-song was surprised, looking at his depressed friend. He drove the world's media crazy. Became the personal enemy of a huge guild, that's all, Shinken answered him anxiously. He had barely left the tower, and events had already taken a diabolical turn. After everything Hyunwoo had done, his friends had reason to worry. The beautiful So-yeon lay prostrate under the weight of worry, and Shin Kyung was also deep in thought. Only Kwon Song was amused by what was happening. He, like no one else, understood the hermit's violent nature. Hyunwoo went out to get some air and stopped in a dark alley where there were no random passers-by at all. He arrived here a few seconds before departure. This time Hyunwoo knew what to expect. The bright glow of the teleporter passed through him, and he felt a familiar feeling of disorientation. The silver-haired Chobit girl greeted him again in the enclosed gray room. Hyunwoo responded enthusiastically. He was also looking forward to this meeting. After all, he had now raised his rank. He asked the android girl if his status had risen, and she said yes. By killing the tourist, he raised his rank. From the lowest rank, she paused loading files. To low, the android happily said. Hyunwoo listened carefully, anticipating the useful answers he might receive. However, the android clearly told him something other than what he expected. A shadow fell across the mad hunter's face. He exploded instantly. The damn machine had once again deceived all his expectations, completely failing to justify his trust. This time, the android girl reacted faster, remembering how scary a hunter is when angry, and she hastened to shift all responsibility onto the system. Someone, who is this developer that writes dialogues for this android, a mad hermit, was blazing. Vedroid again pushed everything onto the system, but this did not change the essence of the issue. He remained a fool for believing their promises. The girl with bolts for a brain cowered in fear, but couldn't add anything. Hyunwoo's rank didn't allow him to know more now. But very soon everything will be in a better shape, she hastened to assure the hunter, who was quick to punish. And since he has already become a guard, he can tell him what he will do next. If he can handle it, then this time he will definitely be able to find out everything he wants. The android girl continued to mess with his brain. However, this only made Hyunwoo even more angry. He heard exactly the same thing last time, and now he suspected that he was simply being deceived. His task is to fight the Ascendants, the Bucketoid continued, giving out something new for once. Hyunwoo immediately took notice of this and demanded a detailed explanation. Those who climb the tower, the girl continued, ascending tourists, like the one Hyunwoo defeated last time. In all his years in the tower, this was the first time he had heard of such a thing. The Bucketoid was saying strange things. It wasn't about the training tower, the animated chatbot explained. Hyunwoo felt more and more interested after all. It wasn't for nothing that he agreed to this task. The tower Chobit spoke of has 12 floors, one of which is the entire Earth. The news sounded shocking. It was out of line with the usual ideas about the world. The silver-haired android repeated everything he had said again, so that Hyunwoo would understand everything. Guard Kim Hyunwoo must now guard the 9th floor out of 12, the android said meaningfully, finally explaining the essence of the mission. We were talking about an entire planet, his homeworld, which could be in danger on a previously unimaginable level. Hyunwoo couldn't believe his ears when he realized the meaning of all the information he received. He looked shocked. Other ascenders are going up to the 9th floor and they need to be stopped, the android girl said. He didn't sign up for this. Hyunwoo was indignant. He just wanted to know who locked him in the tower. The further into the forest, the thicker the partisans, he hissed. Things did not add clarity, only new problems. He was so stuck, the mad hermit lamented. Too much had fallen on him at once. If the ascenders are not stopped, the entire 9th floor will be destroyed, the Bucketoid reported important information. In this case, Hyunwoo will disappear, like the entire planet on which he lives, she stated the obvious. Where is this captain's boat? Hyunwoo slammed his palm on the table. What was happening made him very angry. In other words, he was being told to shut up because he would have to do what he was told anyway. And what he hated most was being manipulated. The android blinked its silver eyelashes in confusion as it processed the request. Chobit began to fuss and make excuses. That was not what she meant at all. What's the matter then? The mad hermit was angry. He could barely keep from destroying everything here. The Vedroid, as if sensing something was wrong, began to vigorously move its microcircuits. And then he gave out completely absurd nonsense. Apparently the bugs short-circuited all her circuits. Hyunwoo was pretty fed up with this parody of a humanoid robot with limited functionality that kept mumbling. The little android went into standby mode. Even the monitor backlight went out. And yet she is part of the control system of the 9th floor. The Bucketoid clenched his fists, gathering all the digital will that was there. Kim Hyunwoo, The android suddenly changed its behavior protocol, adding rigidity to its patterns. Even Hyunwoo noticed the changes in her behavior and voice. This neural network was still capable of learning. True, she still had a lot to learn. She returned to the stupid android again and asked him not to be angry with her. Hyunwoo was appointed as the guardian of the Earth for his own good, the android girl Av continued. Their goal is to help him, she said. Besides, she fawned, there would be a reward, and it would increase with every feat and every defeated ascending tourist. Hyunwoo was mentally calculating the rewards and risks. This was no joke. But all this could have been to his advantage. He had been in prison for 12 years. It could not be left like that. He asked how high a rank one had to be to learn about the tower's creation and the identity of his jailer. No less than the highest rank, the silly android Av answered him. If he catches all the ascenders reliably, he will definitely raise his rank to the required level. Information must be paid for. Let it be so. He is ready. It is better than nothing. Hyunwoo asked how many murders would be required. The little android rubbed her chin thoughtfully and couldn't count exactly. The ascenders were divided into levels, each with its own weight and price, she said, like an experienced bounty hunter. 5 heads of the elite ascendants will be required for Hyunwoo to access the system, the cute android girl informed him. Hyunwoo asked how big the head of the red-faced punk he had eliminated was. The Crimson Horse Arkir, the bucket-like girl with the habits of a slave trader, clarified. She informed Hyunwoo that the level of the hiker was the lowest among all the ascenders. Even the lowest level caused problems for the hermit, forcing him to use the technique of absurdity. This time the conversation was more productive, and he at least understood where he should go next. Hyunwoo was satisfied, albeit not completely. Late at night, he returned to Shinken's apartment, where he lived completely free of charge. He sat in the library with many books on the shelves, studying his status and thinking about the new information. Hyunwoo stared at the blue screen until his eyes began to hurt, but he continued to stare at it. No matter how much he sighed and thought about it, he still wouldn't get any new answers. It doesn't matter whether the Earth enters the tower or not. He will do what must be done and come what may. Saving the world is the world's business. It is not obliged to think about everything at once on its own. Great power is a great headache for Hyunwoo. He was already burdened by this burden. What he saw and learned did not essentially change his previous goals, but now his path would be a little longer. He will simply focus on the immediate targets, kill 5 ascendants, and not think about anything else. The phone vibrated, tearing him away from his deep thoughts. It was little So-yeon calling. In recent days, he began to feel the same way about the nanny who was constantly looking after him, even though he was the older one, and was taking care of the snotty schoolgirl in the tower. True, now that she had turned into a young girl, Hyunwoo picked up the phone, and suddenly he heard her shrill, excited voice. So-yeon asked if he was watching the news now. She demanded that he immediately get up and turn on the breaking news. Hyunwoo turned on the first channel of Korea and began to listen. He did not immediately understand what was being said. When it dawned on him that he was the one who became the subject of heated discussions on the country's main channel. He was accused of murder. It was no longer a joke case like before. Journalists seriously discussed the murder of the hunter Ares in their dungeon, blaming Kim Hyunwoo for everything. The mad hermit was even taken aback by the unprecedented impudence of his opponents. What was happening amused him. In any case, there was nothing to fear, since the hunters lived outside the law. They met at Kwon-so's country house, where it was quieter, away from people and journalists and their cameras. The phones were ringing off the hook non-stop since the night, which was already really annoying Hyunwoo. He thought about throwing them all in a bucket and dousing them with gasoline. Little. So-yeon slammed her fist on the table and was indignant because it was Hyunwoo who was the culprit of all the commotion. After 12 years he came out of the tower and now became a very famous man, she scolded him. And because of the recent events when he single-handedly closed the rift, other countries are also watching him. And now everyone is discussing him as a murderer, but she warned him many times and worried about his affairs with Ares. So-yeon nagged him. Hyunwoo just waved away all the shouts listlessly. He had long since lost all social instincts and didn't care about people's opinions. But for the sensitive So-yeon, this was already beyond the pale. She flared up even more than before at his request to calm down. Hyunwoo felt a sense of confusion. Something vague and incomprehensible called social relationships was invading his mind. It was like his wife was nagging him. But wait a minute, he wasn't married at all, the hermit thought. And yet he could not understand the reason for her great concern for him. But isn't it self-evident? Exclaimed the passionate girl with a heightened maternal instinct. Hyunwoo had scraped off the last of his social skills. The last time he'd been updated was back in school, which was an eternity ago. Does she really like him? He blurted out, completely ignoring the atmosphere, mood, and relationships, demonstrating a third-grade level in understanding people. From such a stupid and inappropriate question, little Soyeon lost her power of speech, as if someone had punched her in the gut. It took her a full minute to come to her senses, while she simply looked at him with her blue ocean eyes. All kinds of painful executions of sinners flashed through her mind, and she noted those where the victim lives for a very long time. For such jokes you can even get a cardiac stimulation. The girl storm turned into a real storm. If he says one more word, she will prescribe him such electrophoresis that it will not seem like much. So Yeon was unrecognizable. Instead of her, a real witch appeared. Hyun-woo decided not to really anger her anymore and shut up. It's better to believe a woman when he promises you something. Shim Ken came to the aid of his suffering friend and took the eccentric hermit into his care. He brought his phone, which was ringing off the hook with hundreds of calls from reporters. On top of that, Hyun-woo rose to the top of the internet search rankings, and so did his friends. Hyun-woo was delighted because he thought that it was his first time there, but Kwon Seong noticed that the hermit had been there before. Shim Kyung began reading the articles, most of which looked like dirty slander against Hyun-woo and his comrades, picking at every little detail. Shim Ken looked at the hermit reproachfully. The scale of the problem had grown beyond what could be simply brushed aside. But Hyun-woo still doesn't understand why there's so much excitement, as if he himself had nothing to do with it. The always reserved friend became despondent. Unlike Hyun-woo, he was very concerned about public opinion. He was responsible for the guild. Kwon Song was on his own wavelength, just like Hyun-woo. He didn't worry about anything. For him, everything was simple. His friend's problems were his problems, the rest didn't matter. Hyun-woo asked Kwon. So, when the press conference on the case would begin, there was only half an hour left before it, and Kwon Sung asked if Hyun-woo was ready to perform in front of the people. Shim Ken was alarmed as if there was a fire. The news was completely unexpected for him. Little So Yeon was also unaware of the Mad Hermit's plans. Hyun-woo reassured them that he had prepared for the meeting with the reporters and was quite confident. But the couple simply didn't believe him. It wasn't Hyun-woo's custom to negotiate verbally. They were worried that he was going to beat up the journalists. Kwon So, who knew about everything in advance, burst out laughing, amused by their reaction. Hyun-woo was a little confused and didn't know what to say to this. His friends didn't trust him at all. It seemed that his comrades had strong doubts about his ability to act, which made Hyun-woo feel despondent. An extracurricular meeting dedicated to an experienced player has begun in the Aries Guild. Boss Hyuk Seong-woo nervously tapped his index finger on the table as he listened to his deputy's report. Yoo Byung stated that everything was going according to plan. After leaking to journalists, they launched bot farms and raised the issue online. The slanderers did a great job, and the attitude towards Hyun-woo changed to negative. People reacted sharply to the unjustified murder. Hyuk-san knew how to manipulate public opinion, give people a reason to hate, and they will do the rest themselves. Everything was going well, even too well. He sat back in his chair, satisfied, waiting for good news. The press conference was scheduled for 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so that there would be time to prepare everything. Hyun-woo was not going to bury his head in the sand. Judging by the social surveys and their dynamics, as well as the decent bribe, Hyun-woo will have a hard time at the conference, confirmed Yoo Byung. This is the power of money. Hyuk Seong-woo thought to himself. Money gives unlimited power and influence and allows you to get even more money. This is how, step by step, you build your empire. Money is the grease for the wheels of an all-out war for dominance. In order to win this game, Hyuk-san decided to attack first when the opponent was not ready yet. And now Hyun-woo is walking on very thin ice, and when the ice cracks, he, the guild leader Aries, will be waiting for him on it. And thus, by moving people like pawns, he will always be one step ahead of his opponents, Hyuk Seong thought. Hyun-woo is inconsistent, harsh with authorities, an uncontrollable madman who does not know how to deal with society. And this is his weak point. This conference is a real battlefield. It will be broadcast live, which means that changes must be responded to immediately, concluded Hyuk-san. Yoo Byung took care of Plan B and sent his men there just in case. Hyuk Seong calmed down the slight nervous tremors of excitement. He had prepared everything. Now he would destroy the next enemy. A malicious grin blossomed on his face. Revenge was a dish best served cold. Hyun-woo shouldn't have messed with him. Spotlights brightly illuminated the conference venue so that nothing was hidden from the camera lenses. Hyun-woo sat alone, almost during the interrogation. but he held himself proudly and courageously, not changing his habits. The crowd was thirsty for fresh blood, and as soon as the interview began, journalists pounced on him with questions under the flashes of hundreds of cameras. Bred in circuses, the audience rejoiced in anticipation of a great show. As always in such cases, in pursuit of hype and news, even someone like Hyun-woo, with his social instincts dulled, felt a huge pressure on himself, as if he were standing in front of a pack of hyenas. And yet he made the first move, immediately taking everything into his own hands. He immediately stated that he would not follow the official regulations but would remain himself and speak as best he could. He pretended not to have heard all the previous questions, which confused the journalist. The first question was about his well-being. The journalist wanted to catch him out. If Hyun-woo said that everything was fine, he would be accused of insensitivity. But Hyun-woo didn't make things up and answered as is, that he felt lousy. Such directness without embellishment confused the journalist, who did not expect it at all. But ordinary people were touched by such frankness. The crowd has always liked upstarts, rebels, people with character, scandals, intrigues, investigations. Hyun-woo handed the floor over to the next reporter by simply pointing his finger. This time he was asked directly whether it was true that he was guilty of murder. Hyun-woo immediately gave an affirmative answer, accepting all the accusations in one fell swoop. This made many people in the room shudder. Usually a person justifies himself when he is accused. What should they do if he really is a cruel killer? Hunters live outside the law. Luckily for them, Hyun-woo suggested that they listen to his side of the story first and then draw conclusions, since this wasn't a trial after all. He took matters into his own hands again and controlled the crowd's reactions, until his words were backed by boundless power. He started by telling everyone the backstory of their conflict with the Aries Guild. Hyun-woo merely refused their recruiters, but the Aries Guild didn't like it. At that time, he still didn't know what this could lead to, after which Hyun-woo turned on the recording. The recording contained the voice of Sean Gunn confessing that he was Aries' killer and that they were his employers. The new evidence and circumstances of the case caused a stir, which radically changed the initial image of Hyun-woo as a cold-blooded killer. The people in the room instantly became excited. It's not every day you hear about someone hiring killers. The recording continued to play, making it clear exactly what Sean Gunn intended to do. The truth was shocking. The unprecedented cruelty of the killers reached their ears, even in the form of a recording. After this, there could be no discrepancies, provided that the recording was original. Hyun-woo let them listen to the whole thing until the very end, for greater effect. Sean Gunn's piercing scream marked the end of the story. For a few moments, the entire audience forgot how to breathe and came to their senses. They rethought everything that had been said about Hyun-woo earlier and their positions on the matter. One of the journalists wanted to know more details and asked about the place where the recording was made. Hyun-woo confirmed that this is the very place that has already been trumpeted everywhere in the Aries Guild, the Swamp Dungeon. He came there to catch the boss, but now it turns out that the story is being told completely differently than it actually was. It was as if Aries was the victim of an attack and an assassination attempt, and not a peaceful hermit who did no harm to anyone. This turned everything upside down, making the accusations false and simply slander. If anyone doubts he can provide other information, Hyun-woo was very confident in himself. But the journalist is not so easily confused, and he immediately asked what could prove the authenticity of the recording. The question sounded weighty. It couldn't be brushed aside so easily. Who could prove that Hyun-woo wasn't a manipulator? However, everything went exactly as he had expected, and he allowed himself a condescending grin. This question was a real gift for him. He really wanted to be asked. Hyun-woo took out another smartphone and shook it in front of hundreds of cameras. The mad hermit suspended the intrigue, waiting for the right pause without giving away everything at once. The reporter hesitated. He was led by the hermit's tricks and did not know what to say. Hyun-woo stated that the phone he was holding belonged to the killer. In court, evidence is usually considered separately, but at the press conference, more importantly, as you say, the reporter hesitated again. The phone itself is still locked, but if given to specialists, it could become important evidence. He brought it with him simply to claim that he had such evidence. As for the killer, Hyun-woo stated that he could only resist since he was a rookie who had just left the tower. He completely captured the attention of the people, skillfully playing on their emotions. Now, according to his calculations, in the eyes of the public, he must appear as a victim of an attack and a person who used self-defense. Hyun-woo was simply fending off an attack from a more experienced and older hunter. According to Hyun-woo, during their fight, Sean Gunn accidentally fell into the mouth of an alligator. The reporter was completely confused by Hyun-woo's testimony, who had just stated that everything that happened was an accident. Hyun-woo responded to this by saying that there was no contradiction. In some sense, he was involved in Sean Gunn's death. Even though the killer was killed by an alligator, Hyun-woo himself is not the kind of person to relax in a fight with. Every word he said was recorded by hundreds of hands that were broadcasting the text. Hyun-woo stated that he had heard a lot about Ares' authority and how great of a guild it was, and that's why he wanted to smooth over their conflict. However, Ares was the first to decide to play on the public field, and dirty, and it went too far. The conference ended successfully for him. Hyun-woo left the buildings in thought. It was not the first time their paths crossed. Ares was bothering him once again and he couldn't leave it as it was. Deputy Yoo Byung could no longer sit. His hemorrhoids had reappeared. The results of the conference had wasted all his efforts, but now things were even worse. Everything was turned upside down because of a tiny little thing, a dictaphone recording. Their guild was seriously exposed to attack, and the journalist will not miss it, said Young-woo. The problems of a large, well-known guild worried them more than the death of one hunter. Yoo Byung winced in anger, imagining the scolding he would receive from his boss. He almost cried, realizing that he had lost to the eccentric teenager. Yoo Byung thought that he was playing against a boy, a simpleton who could only swing his fists. No matter what, they can no longer relax their vigilance. Who knows what other surprises the crazy hermit will throw up. The gang visited the restaurant again to celebrate the victory and the successful conclusion of the conflict with society. Shim Kyung was amazed at Hyun-woo's foresight in recording the fight, as if he knew he might need it. Both Kwon Song and Little So Yeon were surprised by such foresight that Hyun-woo even took the killer's phone with him. It's simple, Hyun-woo said. He lied through his teeth and made it all up. Of course, we are talking about the killer's phone, he added, seeing the astonished faces of his friends. But it didn't help much. They were still perplexed by what they heard. They demanded that everything be told to them immediately, as it was, and that they not be led by the nose. Hyun-woo repeated his words, stating that what he was holding in his hands was not the killer's phone, and that it was not evidence. However, the recording is real. They burned his ears so much about Ares being dangerous that Hyun-woo got the idea to record the conversation. And the imaginary phone of the killer is just one of Shin Ken's devices, which he changed like a girl changes shoes. Little So Yeon was furious. This turn of events worried her more than if the authenticity of the phone was established. Hyun-woo answered her with a satisfied look that no one would know about the fake evidence. Hyun-woo reasoned that everything was quite simple, because the Ares Guild would come for him much faster than the police with their checks. The girl was taken aback by his answer. She still could not understand the train of thought of the mad hermit. The Ares Guild would definitely make contact, he assured her, without bringing the matter to an investigation. So Yeon thought, according to Hyun-woo, everything was going well, but when he solved one problem without creating another. She still firmly believes that a big child in the role of a crazy hermit needs to be kept under close surveillance. The group laughed heartily, teasing little So Yeon for her hyper-responsibility for Hyun-woo. The hermit suggested going back to food. Since he had returned, he had only two favorite things to do: eat and sleep. Of course, there was another occupation: killing enemies. Hyun-woo thought about the Ares Guild. They were considered a world guild, with headquarters in the United States and dungeons in different parts of the world, scattered everywhere. They were able to take the most dungeons in Korea, which made this foothold very important. Hyun-woo calmly devoured the meat on his plate. No matter what the Ares Guild did, the contract, or slander, he didn't care. The reputational losses of the huge guild far exceeded any possible losses for Hyun-woo. He had nothing to lose. With these thoughts, he walked out into the restaurant parking lot. Late at night, they went home, Shuken again acting as a personal chauffeur. But Hyun-woo suddenly asked his friend to leave him, and he himself said that he would go for a walk. Shiken was surprised. Usually this meant that his crazy roommate would definitely get himself into a new mess up to his ears. But Hyun-woo remained adamant and simply waved his hand without going into details. Shiken watched his comrade go. He couldn't be his nanny forever. He sighed and decided to leave everything as it was and not to interfere. After all, his friend survived in the tower himself for more than 10 years. Hyun-woo found a convenient place, narrow, dark, and completely deserted. A perfect place for a hot date. He walked through the night, breathing in the cool air, completely open, as if inviting a conversation. The interlocutors did not keep him waiting, and Hyun-woo sensed their presence. He stopped so they could catch up with him. Come closer, Bandar logs, he thought. The masked enemies were cosplaying as the Leaf Village clan, and they arrived even faster than he expected and surrounded him. Hyun-woo greeted them with bravado, but as soon as he was left alone, his stalkers immediately showed up. The group of fans of his skill moved closer. They left no free space at all. They looked more like Assassin's Creed fans. Their leader invited Hyun-woo to his boss's place for a cup of tea. After taking a closer look at their cosplay, Hyun-woo liked it. He played this game even before the tower. The leader of the cosplay gang thought about what to do with the uncooperative client. Hyun-woo asked who the respected gentleman was, who had sent him an invitation with an escort. However, the leader of the costumed gang responded that their boss preferred to remain incognito.